You clicked too hard, damn it! Greetings and welcome to Midnight's Edge in the morning. I am Tom Gunners. With me is Mr. Culture Casino this morning as the co-pilot. How you doing?
I'm doing well. It's lovely to be here on a Monday when I have had almost enough coffee to feel human.
One of my other halves is also here with me, Script Doctor. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be back online with the rest of the world.
Now, if Mikey shows up, I'll be whole. But here's a gentleman I want to be like when I grow up. And our Monday regular guest, how are you doing, Mr. Chris Gore of Film Threat?
I'm doing well. I'm pre-coffee, so apologies in advance.
That's all right. We understand.
I'll catch up.
If you talk gibberish, we won't call a young priest an old priest quite yet. That isn't unless you said, I've already had the coffee. And you're like, oh, crap.
Nice.
Oh, but good morning, everybody. It is Monday in most of the world. We are going to talk some Thor news. That's the main topic this morning. But before we do all that, let's say hello to our lovely, lovely audience. Please hit that like button. Hit the share button. Let everybody know we're live. We got Scotty in the house. He tells me to check my DMs. I will do that in just a moment, Scotty. We have Olaf Van Ness here. Welcome. Judah Khan. Chad Rupnerine's here. Silver Nova's here and is also celebrating a milestone. That's right. Silver Nova has been a member for 16 months. Thank you for that, Silver Nova. We got Egron here. We have Gonzalo Bergali here. Grand Wazoo is here as well. Bill Barkley, Hyperguyver 2, Duck Nation's here. I think I saw Jordy in the house. Yep, Jordy's here. Welcome everybody to the show. Natasha is here as well. Speaking of wrenches, thank you for being here this morning. We also have some super chats to get through, so we're gonna get to those here. I just want to ask everybody quick, how was your weekend? Chris, did you see any interesting movies this weekend?
Well, I saw Thor last week, and then I saw Marcel the Shell again. So for a second time, and it gets even better. So it's a movie. I think it opens wide this weekend, so it's only in 5 theaters now. But I went to see it again just because it's I don't know, one of my favorite animated movies of the year.
What was it called again?
Marcel the Shell with shoes on.
Mm.
That's the full. I just call it Marcel the Shell.
It's been getting a lot of positive buzz, so sounds good.
It's a stop motion animated movie, and it's weird. It has the voice of Jenny Slate as the lead character, and Isabella Rossellini also voices a character. It's it's better than Thor. So there you go.
Well, that's not a very high bar to do.
That's my review.
But just the same. Chris recommends. So just so I can use that button because I like to. Thank you for that. And Culture, did you see any good movies this weekend?
Yeah, actually, we were talking a little bit backstage before we got kicked off. I am almost completely done with the first part of Bahubali Part 1, the beginning. Wow.
Bahubali?
Bahubali. It's from India. Yeah. I can't wait to do a review on it. That's my Thursday video this week. It's going to be Bahubali.
Yeah, you can have it.
Okay, that's awesome. Awesome.
Is it pronounced Bahubali?
I think that probably sounds more correct.
I think it's Bahubali.
Okay.
I don't know. See, here's the problem. I'm getting introduced to all this new cultural stuff, right? Because you have all of the Bahubali. Yeah. It is
kind of like how you say Spider-Man.
Batman.
You guys are mean to me, but yes, Spider-Man.
Yes, we are.
Yes. Yeah, but it's it's so great, and they chant it in the film. I mean, but it's good, and it's fantastical, like RRR. I mean, I believe it's the same writer. Yeah,
at least the same director, according to
yeah.
Luis here.
Yeah, it is it's good stuff. Give me some of that good.
Script Doctor, what about you? Catch anything this weekend worth talking about?
No. Just did a lot of reading and working and writing.
Yeah, we were supposed to watch The Frighteners, but then Yeah, that didn't happen. My computer's taking a dump on me on top of it all, so yay. But no, I did get to see that Everything Everywhere All at Once or whatever this weekend.
Oh wow, what'd you think?
I liked it, but I'm not. It might have been overhyped a bit for me. Like, this is the problem I have with movies that get extremely overhyped, and like there was some woke elements to it that kind of pulled me out. But other than that, I thought it was pretty good. It was decent anyway.
It's
the end was a little convoluted, but yeah.
True. I think it's the better of the multiverse movies.
Yeah. Jamie Lee Curtis was actually really good in it.
Yeah, she's great.
I didn't even know she was in it until like, oh shit. And not only that, she plays a pretty major role in it. So it's like, oh wow. No, a great cast. Not only that, what's his face? Is it Ki-Hu Kwan? Is that his name? Who played Data in Short Rounds in it as well?
Wow.
I believe. And no, it was a pretty decent film overall, but I'm not quite sure I see the hype that everybody does have for it, but after I got done watching, I'm like, yeah, this is going to end up getting nominated for a bunch of Oscars. I can see it already. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. That's A24, right, Chris?
Yes, it's another A24. I think it's they're financially their most successful film.
Yeah, I think it is. You're right.
And,
yeah.
You know, I agree with Tom on it. I think the problem is when you get a movie, you're constantly being told it's great, you should see it. I think that the only movie that might hold up to that is RRR. I had to, if you're holding my bingo card, that's, I think, the Free Space. But, you know, Everything Everywhere All at Once, my issue with it is, one, yeah, the overhype. Two, it does get convoluted and needlessly, because it focuses on these side characters that you don't care about. It should just focus on Evelyn and her family, and that's it. And, you know, these side characters, fine for a gag, but the fact that we needed to know every side quest of every character, and it felt long. The movie's like over 2 hours. It would have been perfect movie at 90 minutes.
Yeah, I could have lost 20 minutes easy.
You could have lost 20 minutes and you wouldn't have missed a thing, and you could throw that in the deleted scenes. You could do a director's special edition. Fine.
Well, yeah, because the point at the end gets hit home like 3 or 4 times to the point where I think they even miss their own message. I'm like, do they realize how they just kind of made Michelle Yeoh's character worse in a lot of ways than she should be because of the daughter's like whole like idea, and not to get into spoilers or anything like that, but like just the whole idea of the situation and what her issues are. And it's like, wait a minute, did you just throw her mom under the bus? And like, and then you have this whole thing at the end with the grandfather, and it's like, wait, what? That doesn't even make sense. So I have questions, but overall, no, I thought it was a very visually stunning film. Sound is amazing. I really love the originality of it, and I think I think I would have enjoyed it a little bit more had they taken it just a bit more wacky, to be honest with you. Like, I really would have loved to have seen some more of these abstract worlds. Like, I really enjoy the sense of humor, like with the world with people with hot dog fingers, for instance. It was a great sight gag, and it was fun, but it got overused by the end. And you're like, well, we could have seen 3 or 4 other different kind of funky worlds instead of this kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, there was other stuff that could have been done with it, I think.
I just think it would have been a better film if it was a shorter film. Keep it a 90-minute comedy. I don't know why movies are incapable of doing that. And you know, now there are calls for Taika Waititi to release this longer cut of Thor.
Oh God, no.
That includes Jeff Goldblum and like all these other characters. It seems like that movie changed a lot in the cutting, you know, and it's.
I tell you what, Taika, you release all the stuff you didn't release in that movie. I'll watch that and I'll tell you which movie was better.
Oh, because, I'd be curious.
Yeah, like, because I'd love to see the Jeff Goldblum stuff, but I know we haven't had a chance to really directly talk too much about the movie. Last time you were on, you were only able to give your initial reaction to the film, and it sounds like you and I are the only ones on the panel that have seen it thus far.
I mean, like, you know, my opinion is, you know, what was weird is, and I'm not the only one who experienced this so much. I missed so many little details in the movie because so many things were just sort of thrown out as a line. You know what I mean? Like as like a simple thing. In fact, Jeremy Johns, if you saw his video, he got like 3 facts wrong or 3 things. And it's just because nothing matters. so many things that happen in the movie, just I feel like just nothing had any weight to it, you know, with the exception of things surrounding the character of Gore, but it just seemed like everything was a joke. So it just nothing really seemed to matter. And a lot of things were dumb or cringe. And then a lot of things I just, you know, and I've talked to other people that are like, just, yeah, so much of the movie just, it's like, after a while, I just stopped caring. And then things just sort of like, it didn't matter. Like, so I don't know. I did like it better, Multiverse of Madness, but I feel like the bar is really low, you know? So
see, and I'm not even sure if I did or not, Chris. Like, that's where I'm at too. It's like,
really?
This is like, well, no. And that movie's so bad too, that it's like, I had to kind of sit there and go, if somebody had a gun to my head and they said I had to watch one of those two movies, which one would it be? And after the film, I'm like, you know, maybe it would probably be Doctor Strange, because I just didn't enjoy this so much. Even though this had more quote unquote fun in it than Doctor Strange, Doctor Strange was like the easier watch.
Yeah.
It got to a point where this, like, especially the last half, where it's just so tough to get through the rest of it.
I just feel like Phase 4 is directionless. It's not going anywhere. And someone brought up something in a chat on our spoiler discussion last Friday, which I thought was great. Like, they should have just, and I feel this way too, they should have ended the Marvel Universe at Endgame. After Endgame, just stop. Literally stop. There's something to be said for restraint, in the sense that, like, I think the reason Star Wars has existed to today is because George Lucas didn't make 10 other sequels in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s. You know, he waited decades before he restarted, right? Like, well, not decades, what, 17 years, something like that. Like, anyways, I'd have to do the math. Forgive me. Culture can do it for me. Get out his
math is racist.
I'm kidding. I'm just saying that, like, less is more. And I kind of feel like if the Marvel Universe had ended at Endgame, maybe one epilogue movie and that was it. But since they've continued to make these things, they just don't seem like they matter. You know, death doesn't really matter. You know, nothing really matters. And we're not leading towards any sort of big cataclysmic event that could be interesting, like Thanos, you know, in Infinity War. Like, that leading to that was the greatest buildup in cinema history, period. You know, like, there's just nothing to compare it to. So I think by having, like, no direction for Phase 4, they kind of blew it. It probably would have been better, not necessarily for, you know, profits. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Putin.
Oh, I didn't know if that's what you were asking. I could have told you that.
Yeah. So that was, well, yeah, well, but I mean, then also, like, you know, Return of the Jedi was 1983, so that was what, 14 years later?
Yep.
No.
Yeah, between the two movies, it was roughly 15, close to 15 years.
I still think the prequel trilogy came a good decade too early. They should have done more with just the original cast. But Lucas,
I agree.
Focus on being a dad.
No, I kind of feel like we missed a trilogy in there. You're right. Like, there should have been a trilogy at some point between, like, starting at like 89 or 90 through like 95 or 6, and then like another 10 years. You're right. Script like another 10 years after that. Do the prequel. But,
just because the second Death Star has exploded doesn't mean that there's not a power vacuum, and that you're not going to have like a civil war within the Empire of who's going to take control. That the rebellion is going to have a difficulty, you know, overcoming.
The Thrawn books really were the best version of that story that really took it seriously. But what we got in this whole discussion about was that they should have ended the Marvel Universe, that present day Marvel Universe, after Endgame, or maybe one more epilogue type movie. And what they could have done is gone back to the 1960s. I'm not saying don't make Marvel movies. I'm saying sort of make them like, that's a boxed set, right? Yeah. The Infinity Saga is a box set. That's it. That's a story from the Marvel Universe. Now you go back to the 60s, you introduce the X-Men as a period.
And the Fantastic Four, yeah.
And the Fantastic Four, and maybe some classic other characters from that era, right? Like, and you just do a decade of movies set in the, you know, early 60s that takes us all the way through like maybe the mid 70s, and you do that, and that's another box set. And you build to like Galactus, right? Galactus would be like the final thing, potentially. Right? This is me thinking out loud. Like,
but no, and that's kind of what the original plan was, Chris, until James Gunn was fired, and then all hell broke loose, and that's why Phase 4 has become Phase Bore, because it was meant to head towards the cosmic arena, and that went out the window, and then they were just kind of meandering in this multiverse mess for the last couple of years now.
Yeah, I don't think they were ready for the magical angle of Marvel at this point. Like Doctor Strange is your good introductory character, but you need a long story arc for people to
like Doctor Strange 3 or 4. It should come in, not right away.
That would be like, I'd say Doctor Strange 3 or 4 would be the period where the cosmic side is ended, and now you're getting into the mystical aspect of things.
Yeah, it's probably the best place, but
because it's going from science to magic in a very big arc. Like it starts with Tony Stark with technology and science, and then you keep going. Then you go to space, cosmic, and then once you get past that threshold, then you can get into the mystic. It's a gradual,
which is kind of funny because that's kind of the message, or at least the overall, not the message, sorry, but the one of the overarching storylines in Thor Love and Thunder actually is science versus magic. But we also have joining us this morning a good buddy of mine, Scott from over at the Sporking News podcast.
What's up, guys?
I don't think Scott's ever met Chris, so introductions are
good to meet you. How you doing, Chris?
He does kind of bite, so keep your hands to yourself.
Yes,
that
don't or feed him, fanboy,
and don't give him direct eye contact.
Yes, you're not supposed to feed me after midnight.
There you
that
go.
Too.
Yeah, or is
no,
it
no? Scott's a good boy. He's awesome.
Oh, thanks, Dad. How's
everybody
actually,
I think
doing,
you're
though?
older than me.
I am. I believe so.
No, we're just talking about Thor, and culture had keyed me in that you had seen it. And,
yes, terrible. Terrible. Like, I don't know what else to say. It was so the last couple. Every Thor movie has the same premise. Thor is either the last two. He's been a buffoon at the beginning. The first one, he was too macho, too manly, too arrogant. And then he goes through, this metamorphosis and finds himself. Ragnarok, I thought it was finally okay. He found himself. He's going to be the king. And, Endgame happens, Infinity War, whatever. But this one was just even worse than that because he's a buffoon through the whole thing. And all he is there to do is push the women's story along. And not to be sexist, but it was sexist in that way to call it a Thor movie when it really wasn't about him, but him helping them on their way. That's the way I felt about it. And it just sucked. He's the butt of every joke.
Yeah. Literally the butt at once.
Yeah. I mean, Chris, it's like someone said in the chat earlier, he was talking to Culture, like, do you think they came out 5th highest ever because they marketed this in trailers to women? Because it wasn't marketed to men. It was, they played the 80s music, but it was, sexy Thor and women being girl power. Like,
oh yeah, it's definitely got that romantic comedy-esque feel to it. And I think I knew what they were. I think they thought they knew what they were doing. But in the end, that's kind of one of the top stories you're kind of getting us right into, Scott. And that is that the box office didn't really kind of play out the way they were hoping to. No. Now, there's one kind of weirdness to this movie compared to Doctor Strange that I noticed. And I don't know if Chris has noticed this in his circles or not. But there's even some people that I respect in the community of critics or whatever you want to call it, and in other areas, and that are sticking up for this movie. And I wouldn't even necessarily call them stans, but we've gotten to the point where they're just kind of like trying to throw out that whole, like, basically, you just can't, you guys just can't not hate everything, right? Like, basically is the first thing. And it's like, and the second thing I keep hearing is it's on you to enjoy something. And you shouldn't go in with the expectations that you have. And this just wasn't the movie you were expecting it to be. And I'm just like, no, I pretty much went in with 0 expectations, and I still walked out disappointed, right? And I was one of the few people that I remember, especially in this fellowship, that just adored Ragnarok. Because anytime I'd bring that up before this, it was like, that's like bringing up, Voldemort or whatever the hell his name is.
I agreed with you on I liked Ragnarok.
Like, so I honestly was like, I think my problem with it is I would have enjoyed it just a tad more had not Andre come in here the morning after seeing it going, it was not as bad as I expected it to be. And then I brought that up to him, and he goes, Thomas, it is not as bad as I expected it to be. It's not a glowing review. It's
That's true.
I know, but I'm just like, yeah, but if you're saying it's not as bad as we expected it to be, you know, he's like, yes, but
when you expect it to be garbage.
Yeah, I mean, you're just like.
Well, what I admired about the dichotomy between Thor and then Thor Ragnarok is the fact that in Thor, he's a character that glorifies war and is not humble, and he becomes humble. And then in Thor Ragnarok, he's a man who glorifies adventure but does so with humility. And I think that was the sweet spot of where his character was. The comedy, I felt, came a bit more from him being a bit more of a fish out of culture with the alien species and a bit of humanity's current era and Bruce Banner, but not so much at the expense of him not being intelligent, because he was actually rather knowledgeable about things. From my understanding with regards to Thor Ragnarok is that he's just arrogant is basically the defining quality of it. And what I do know of this story, there's a big contradiction with regards to how Mjolnir interacts with Jane and how it's there to protect her, but at the same time, its powers costing her life. So that's a contradiction. If it should know it's going to cost her life and therefore not have to give her the power of mighty Thor. But it does that. So that's already a mistake in 101 writing.
There's a lot of that in this movie.
Don't have your premise contradict the goals of your characters, the goals of your characters. So yeah, that seemed pretty bad.
No, that's kind of been my argument too, right? Is like, sure, you may not go into one of the you can make the argument that you have your own set of expectations and biases going into any movie, right? But there's still an argument to be made for what is objectionally good and subjectively good to you. And there's a big difference, and you need to be able to separate the two. And I feel like there's some people who are not, or they're just getting so upset about people not, quote unquote, overlooking some of the smaller things. And it's like, no, you go into a restaurant and you have an expectation of whatever it is. Like I like to use pizza as an analogy because most people like pizza, but not everybody enjoys the same type of pizza, right? So that's a really good analogy. In this case, though, it's like you go in with the expectations of I'm getting a pizza. Let's say I'm trying the new version, but it doesn't matter. If the pizza comes out burnt or undercooked, that's not my fault.
Right.
There's something fundamentally wrong with that pizza. Even though it normally would be fine, it's not, because in this case, the chef fucked up. Maybe he didn't
put. What if you have the concurrent option where you order a pizza, it looks exactly as you expect it to, not burnt, not ruined or anything, but you bite into it and it doesn't taste the way you expect it to.
Well, there is that, but I actually had an end. Well, I had a different ending to because this goes just directly to my point. Because what they're saying is basically like they're staring at that burnt pizza with you, and they're like, just eat it. It's fucking pizza. It's like, no, it's burnt. I want to send it back and say something to the chef. And they're like, no, just fucking eat it. You shouldn't do that. That's bullshit. It's pizza. There's nothing wrong with it. It's like, you could clearly see there's something wrong with it, but everybody else is just ignoring it, and they're forcing you to eat it and then pretend that it's beautiful and great and nothing's wrong. Like, that's kind of the point I was getting to, Script, to where I get what you're saying and it works, but to my point, the fact that they're like forcing it down your throat to like it, it's like all this other stuff all over again that we've dealt with for the past few years.
Well, you're referring to like the people at the table are telling you to force.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So that's what my point is, because it's coming directly from my peers, right? Yeah. So I'm like,
it's not necessarily the chef walking out there and telling you, yeah, you have to eat this.
No, it has nothing to do with the chef this time. It's them. It's them basically running interference for the chef before I even have a chance to say anything to the chef, right? Like they're saying I shouldn't even complain because it's pizza, no matter how burnt it is. Like, that's kind of what they're saying to me, and it's like, no, this is overdone. This is done. This is more than done. It's black. It's burnt. There's no eating this, and they're just like, no, shove it down your throat and enjoy it. It's that same, like, if we don't watch it, we're never going to get any more mentality. And I'm just like, are you insane? Like, but that kind of gets us to the main point here. And that is that the film is underperforming. As you see already, almost half the panel hasn't seen the movie. Over, what was it now? What's the final figure, Culture? 20 million less than Doctor Strange opening?
Yeah. They still are sitting at that $143 million mark with a 302 global open for this last weekend. This, of course, is a story from the 9th, but I'll bring up a more up to date story, but this number is going to be consistent. This is the estimate that they were going with the whole way along. So,
but this is not good, and for various reasons we're going to get in here here quick, because the big question is, I see a lot of people sticking up for the box office saying, well, it's a hit. It's like, yeah, technically it is for now, but it's not going to make the money it needs. We can kind of, unless there's some, I don't see how in the next few months this movie's going to make the money back that it's supposed to already, just going by what we know from the box office of Doctor Strange and other films. And Doctor Strange didn't have the competition this movie did, right? Even out the gate. But what this movie does have going for it is it doesn't have much coming up for competition, but I don't really foresee it making the $700-800 million it needs to make to break even, because this one had a bigger budget than Doctor Strange. So Chris, do you see this movie making the money that Disney needs to consider it an actual success? And do you think that this is a sign that we're on a downward trend for the Marvel universe going forward?
It's a small sign for sure. 100% a small sign, because these movies used to be expected to make $1 billion. Now they're not opening in China. And for, I think there was an article you sent to us to read about.
Yeah, actually, we're going to get right into that. We can bring that up now if you want.
Yeah, it's, and all of this is over a couple of references to, it's gay and LGBTQ related, right?
Right.
And all these things are very short. They could be easily cut out. I don't know. I guess they're choosing to die on that hill. So there you go. I also think it's unnecessary. Wasn't Korg like, I guess Korg's species now is all male or something, but that wasn't the case. They retconned it from Ragnarok. Am I correct? Maybe the chat.
I don't remember. Now you mention it, I don't remember if they even talked about that in Ragnarok, but in this movie, you're right. Like in this case, they make their entire species male. Yeah. And that whole thing is basically for a joke, to be honest.
Right. But it was for a dumb joke with like a freaking Korg species dude with like a Freddie Mercury mustache.
Yeah.
It was stupid. It was really stupid. And
in fact, I'm like, is this actually kind of insulting to gay people? And not being gay, I couldn't really, come to that conclusion. So I don't want to assume that, but considering how the rest of the movie is played out, and then how that is a joke and the way it plays out in the movie, I was kind of like, it's kind of like, because, and one of the reasons, as you just said, is how on the nose it is with that mustache and shit. It just kind of comes off.
Well, I'll just say that anecdotally, I have more and more friends that just say, "Oh, I'm good with Marvel. Like after Endgame, I'm good. It's done for me. The story is done." And I do think that there's something to be said for, George Lucas waiting 16 years from the end of Return of the Jedi in 1983 to The Phantom Menace 1999. And thank you, chat, for the help on the math with that. Yeah. This is what happened. This is what you get when I haven't had coffee yet. So apologies in advance. But I just think it's diminishing returns. I think that the story for these characters, and they're played out in comics. I mean, there's other things you can read, other stories and adventures of these characters you can read in the comics. We don't need to tell every story of Thor or Captain America or whatever. But I do think going back to this, just sort of saying, okay, Endgame was a 10-year journey that told the stories of these characters, and it doesn't need to continue. But because you need to feed the beast being a multi-headed beast of the consumers, right? And then additionally, the stockholders, just more and more stuff needs to come out. The problem is that what happens is that just completely dilutes the franchise. And I think we're just seeing that in real time. Like, we're looking at, like, Thor may end up, it's definitely not going to do $1 billion. Is it going to go to 800 million? I don't know, but I will say this. I do think that, like, just based on the crowds this weekend, because I saw Thor for a second time on Thursday night, and it was almost every seat full in the house, except for the first few rows of an IMAX theater. Then I went to see Marcel the Shell with shoes on, and the theater was packed at like 11 a.m. right? Like
Wow.
my screening was like, there were like 15 people seeing that movie that early, but it really seemed like there were a lot of people going to the movies that weekend. But I feel like that's the first weekend Marvel people need to see it first so they can talk about it. So it's like their spoilers aren't ruined. They want to see it first. And I think you're going to see a pretty significant drop off, just like Doctor Strange and or worse. So, and I think that that's kind of where the audience is settled. Marvel fans will be there day one or weekend one. And then unless the movie is worth multiple viewings, they're not going to come back a second time. And I just think there was just something about the movie in terms of just the way I experienced it, where I just was like not feeling it. Like none of this seems to matter. And some of it was entertaining, but look, if you throw out 100 jokes, 20 will be funny.
That's the thing.
That's
the thing, Chris. It's
20 will be fun.
I don't know if anybody saw what Mahler tweeted out. He put Thor from the Avengers and then Thor from like this movie, and like Thor from the Avengers, like we said before, fish out of water. Oh, you don't have schnorkels or whatever the heck he calls them, big ugly monsters. But then he goes in deep about, I used to call it war when I was young. He had true emotions, true grit. This was all a guy who didn't want to show his ex that he still cared and still trying to get over the 8 years, 3 months, and 2 days. He looked like the weak one.
This is like
thing.
a Saturday morning cartoon, basically.
Not even. It was like
when
you
take the cancer and other elements out of it. It is like
yeah, I guess so. I thought it was like
especially
a bad
with
Hallmark.
Well, I'm talking like you have inanimate objects now that all of a sudden are characters and have characteristics and are acting jealous and other things within the context of the story. It was funny to have Thor be just from that mentality where he treated them like they were living beings, because that's kind of we had that conversation with Andre, but within the context of the movie it makes absolutely no sense,
right?
And it kind of, to me, it just takes away from it. It adds to this idea that the whole movie feels like a cartoon, a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah.
And then you add in the one-liners, which are constant. Like, you're right, Chris, like I get having a bunch of these one-liners, you test them and then you cut them all and you leave the best 10, 15 in, and that's it. You don't have to have, like, this is worse than Ragnarok. At least Ragnarok, I mean, and I'm talking about for those who hated it.
Yeah.
Because I loved it. But for those who hated Ragnarok, there's about 2-3 times where Ragnarok just goes too far. Enough with the jokes. This is the whole movie with this thing. Everything is a fucking joke.
Yeah.
And it's like a bad sitcom with bad one-liners. And you don't get the fun stuff like with Hulk and the back and forth. You don't have any of that there. Jeff Goldblum is completely gone. He was at least hilarious. So you're left with Cord,
Natalie
Portman, and
neither one of
Valkyrie.
those women have any. They have no. I don't know. It's like I felt like they didn't even want to be there. They're so like there's no chemistry. I mean, you can see Chris Hemsworth is a really good actor, and he plays this doofus Thor really well. I got to give the guy credit. But like with her, I don't know. It's almost not as bad as her chemistry with Hayden Christensen, but it's pretty bad. This is like Thor Ragnarok threw up on itself and then took acid. That's what it's lost. It has
that's
no
a pretty
direction.
Good analogy, actually. But
thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Culture. Now you do the same question as Chris, though, but after your point.
No. First, you'll have to reiterate the question, but
sure.
My thoughts are this, or my question is this. Did they not have this expectation? There were many of us that said this might open okay, but it's not going to be. It's not going to reach these heights. This will be the how many films?
I was the one who was wrong. I said this was going to open big.
Oh, really?
I've been eating crow for the past 2-3 days.
Oh crap. Okay. Well, the reason I ask is because Chris is here. I'm like, did we have high expectations for this film? Is this going to be, film number 4, film number 5 that doesn't hit $1 billion in these superhero franchises? That I mean, is that where we're at? I mean, the only one of the last Marvel products that hit $1 billion plus was Spider-Man: No Way Home, which is a Sony joint thing with Marvel, right? So are these pure Marvel films just going to be this going forward?
Well, that was my question, Culture, I just asked Chris that that I was sending down the line basically was basically, is this that turning point for Marvel? Are we on the downward trend now?
I think we're past the downward trend. Yeah. Let me ask. So let me answer it then, because I heard what Chris was saying to that specifically, but I had no expectations for this to do well. Okay, none of the earmarks were there. The hype wasn't there. We talk about hype around films, right? We can get excited for things that are good projects, and when you have a touchstone, which a lot of these characters are, or they're touchstones to us, right? And this no longer is. Marvel has lost its grasp on the zeitgeist, and they did it to themselves. Disney overall, in an overarching controlling position, I think they actually have lost the trust of the audience. I mean, we've talked about that before, but I don't see this thing hitting $1 billion. I don't know if it will crawl its way over 800 million, and specifically since it ain't going to air in China, because Disney doesn't want to be called out for the hypocrisy any longer on some of the representation elements in their films, which is why, I
think this might be part of Chapek's plan.
Me too. If he's truly playing 4D chess,
yes,
right, and he's trying to,
these are sacrifices now.
Yeah, he's making financial sacrifices. This is an expensive one though, because this film reportedly is $250 million in budget. $250 million in budget. If it doesn't make 600 or more, it's underwater, because reportedly now from multiple places, this thing had a $200 million ad campaign.
And I've even gone a little higher. Yeah, because of that ad campaign, I've even been saying it has to pretty much break the $1 billion to almost go even.
Well, the sad part is that I'm hearing that of that 250 million, you don't see 250 million on the screen, which is basically a part of the course of the last 4 Marvel films. And I guess that goes into the next story, Tom.
To a point, yeah.
To post-production.
Yeah, we're going to get into that here too. Yeah.
Is. Like, I think that you can make a fantastic Marvel film with some really killer special effects when you between 120 and 160 million dollars. Because you find the best people that are worth the money, that will deliver on the deadlines you have, and you don't try to narrow down that release date time frame to be, we need this done in 4 months. No, because basically you're trying to save on labor costs to deliver a subpar product to get your money as quickly as possible in the theater. That's not going to help, because what the market has shown, especially over the last 10 years, is that your movie only really is a success if your audience is going back to see it week after week.
Wow.
And the only way you can do that is you have to have a great story, and you have to have everything needs to be polished and worked on to be the best it possibly can be before it hits that first premiere.
Yeah, and you also
Marvel anymore.
But Script, I think you would agree, and probably Chris as well. You need a great companion advertising promotion. You need other products there promoting your product, like Minions did. Yep. I mean, Minions got $200+ million worth of partners promoting them.
I would actually argue this movie had a fine campaign. The movie does the campaign part of it. I think sells the movie just fine as far as like with the music and the flashiness and the colorfulness of it. I think the movie is just not landing with people.
Wow.
And I guess in that case, like Script, I mean, let's take your response to this, and then we'll jump to Scott, and then we'll move on with this and the other story, because they are tied into each other, I think. And that is, do you think that we're on the downward trend, Script and Scott?
We're on the downward trend for at least another 2 years. Because again, when you take a look at the execution with regards to some of the stories, not just on Disney Plus, but with the movies themselves, they're hiring based on assignment, which is, I mean, it's usually pretty good with regards to what you want to, with the direction of a franchise, but they're not really hiring the best writers who can deliver on that assignment. They might be hiring someone who's like, okay, this is the assignment, this is the details, this is the story outline, you fill in the blanks, and there might be under such restrictions that there's no room for them to have as much fun with it as they could. And if they do manage to squeeze that in there to the script, someone above is probably saying, you know what, we're going to cut that out because we don't think that's going to fit with the brand or overall arc that we're trying to do. So basically you're having some voices within the studio system neutering some of the creativity or some of the inventiveness of how these stories can be told, because the premise of Thor basically reconciling with his ex, falling in love again, and stepping into the role of a leader, that's a good story to tell abstractly. It all comes down to how well do you tell that story, what do you focus on, how do you achieve those outcomes, and where do you rely, where's the spine of the emotional drive, so that the audience will care enough about this journey that they'll want to see it to the end and then go back and see it again later. I don't think those questions are being asked anymore in Marvel production offices.
Mm. So Scott, real quick, you think this is a downward trend?
Oh, definitely. When you hire people because you have an agenda and the people don't need to love it or even do research on it or keep it, straight. You could retcon the movie before, it's fine. The way I look at it is fans who really are the ones. I know there's normies out there that will watch it, but even they can only take it so far. And I think when you're on the shoulders of great movies from phase 1, 2, and you're creating characters based off of those earlier heroes, and they're just kind of ripping them off, people want to see something new. If you want to have LGBT, superheroes, give me something new, give me something strong. You can introduce it through another, through a Thor movie, but don't take Thor and make a new Thor, or like at the end of this movie, what looks like a child Thor. So I don't know. I definitely see it's on a downward spiral, and this is a chance other film industries or production companies have a chance to jump in and maybe, I don't know, hack away at Marvel's machine and maybe steal some with some good superhero movies.
Yeah. I want to get.
No, I want to comment on this. I was
going to say, we got to get to some super chats here, but to finish up this first portion of this conversation, this is part of the reason for the title today, because Campia, there's a bunch of the media out there pushing this movie like it's a big, huge success for Marvel. And that was the initial question I'm posing to the entire panel and you guys out there in the chat. Do you think it is? And I think the answer is no. I think that to answer that question and the one preceding it, no, I think it was not a success. I think that they're not going to make their money back on this one. I think this is a big deal. I think this is going to cause a lot of, maybe not heads to roll, but it's going to cause some problems. And this goes directly to what we were saying before, especially Script and I, that when it comes to Disney, Marvel is one of the bigger fish to fry right now. And they've got a lot of cleaning up to do and figuring out what the hell's going on there, because that's a sinking ship that's going down fucking fast.
Well,
like in the last year, it has really tanked.
And they need it. And this is a new spin. In fact, Jason from Sci-Fi from ETD calls out and says, this is how they're treating the Thor movies as its own franchise rather than it being the Marvel franchise, right? Because we usually speak in big brand, not little individual tiny segments of brand.
Well, that's so they can say it's more successful than it really is. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. And yes, that does seem like new spin, and it was something that I noticed this morning. So yeah, absolutely. So
because yes, is 140 anything to sneeze at? No, absolutely not. As Six pointed out in the chat, that's right in line with Jurassic World Dominion. There's the big difference, though, is Jurassic World Dominion cost almost $75 million less.
Right. Can I ask
that's
a question?
A big difference. Go ahead. Sorry, Scrub.
What Campia was saying there, is he talking about the Thor franchise, not Marvel franchise? So is this the highest grossing Thor? Because wasn't this?
It's the biggest opening for Thor. But as far as biggest openings, it's like, I think it's either fifth, third or fifth or something like that.
Yeah, it's like fifth. But I mean, that's all they could do. So that's the play. That's how they play it off. That is
actually, but the other spin, Scott, just to add to what you're saying, and then I'll please continue.
No, please go ahead.
No, the other thing is that he is, everybody's touting it as being the third biggest pandemic opening this year. Post-pandemic opening.
Okay, that's where the third number comes in. Thank you, Cole.
Yeah. So go ahead, Scott. I'm sorry.
No. I said what.
No, but you're 100% right. That's exactly what they're doing. They're spinning this in a way.
They've spun it lots of ways.
And they could argue, well, you're trying to spin it to make it sound worse. It's like, no, okay, fine. You can say that, but Doctor Strange barely made $900 million.
Mm-hmm.
This is not going to even touch that, and it should. This is fucking Thor. This is one of the OG Avengers, and this is why my initial prediction for this box office was $200 million. That was the number I predicted. Boy, was I way off.
See,
right there shows you how way off I was.
I was giving him the 180 that I thought was like in the mid range on this one. So you're not wrong, Tom.
No, believe it or not, the one who not everybody on this panel, we have their predictions written down. 6 gave them the ones that we did when we did do it, and the only other person around that that was close was Mexican Iron Man. He played the long game and said 150 to 180, which I think is kind of cheating, but he did say 150. So, but 6 initially had 150, and then she changed her mind. So if she'd have stuck with her original prediction, she'd have been right, closer to it anyway. But no, so like let's get into some of these super chats here because you guys have been infinitely patient, and we appreciate that. And God, you guys are sending in some huge ones here too. Yeah. So let's start with those. Daniel says, with $50, holy cow! I'm the original comic book movie fan that was encouraging friends and family as far back as 89. 89's Punisher, Spawn, and even Tank Girl.
Wow. X-Men
and the MCU kids' dream come true. Now I want comic book movies to die. They lost people like me at Endgame.
Yeah.
Endgame. Here's the thing, and I see exactly where you're coming from, Daniel, and I share a lot of your sentiments, but I'm curious if it's more so just the caliber of films at this point. Because
it's always the caliber of films.
Yeah, I don't think
the genre will last forever so long as the caliber
yeah.
is strong and good and bringing people to the theaters.
Right.
Nothing dies in Hollywood. Ever.
No, yeah, they'll tap that till it's dry. But I see what he's saying. Around that time of Endgame, look at the other movies that were coming out from Marvel. I mean, Spider-Man, yeah, but you had Captain Marvel. Like it wasn't. You could see.
Well, that kind of gets us back to expectations, right? After Endgame and Infinity War, you have this expectation set now. Mm-hmm. There's a bar, and from there on out, you kind of have to continue to keep that, and you can't. That's the thing. It's kind of impossible.
Well, I'm sorry. What I was just going to say is what they did wrong, Tom, is that, the response to Thanos in Infinity War, where see what they missed is he was a bad guy who we could understand why he was doing it from his point of view, but he was still evil. They now thought, okay, we have to make every bad guy like a sympathetic bad guy. And it's just like, every series they have now, every movie, it's a sympathetic bad guy. And give me someone who's truly evil. I want evil for evil's sake. And they don't do
that's
it
what
anymore.
What you're talking about is them conflating the sympathetic villain with a villain that has a goal that you understand why they're doing it. You don't have to agree with it. You just have to understand why they're doing it. Lex Luthor is jealous of Superman's attention, so that's why he wants to kill Superman. Easy to understand. Like it's all ego there. Thanos is concerned about the resources of the universe and thinks that cutting the population in half will fix it. Evil, but I understand it. I don't understand what Kang in the Loki series is doing one master timeline. Why?
Yeah.
Like
that was
no real point.
He's
Gore saying vengeance? Just vengeance? Is that what Gore's plot is? Just he's upset and he's vengeance. And
kind of, but he's another sympathetic villain.
That's what all it is a sympathetic villain. His gods betrayed him, he feels like, and the sword is making him crazy. And, I get that. And Christian Bale is a great actor. A lot of people got mad at me, but I personally didn't even really like him in this role. He did what he could with it. But maybe it's because I didn't want to pay the money to go see it. So I watched my Indian friend's cam version, but it was one of those things where it's like, I just want evil. Like I want to understand your evil, like you said. I don't need to be like, oh shucks, he died at the end, or oh shucks, like give me a real bad guy. I want a real bad guy.
No, Gore is one of the better parts of the film.
Thank you.
I feel like he's just fine. In fact, if anything, he's the best part, but they also did him an injustice considering what I've heard about the comic book version of him.
Right.
But no, as far as what the context of the film, he's just fine. But I agree with your point, Daniel. Like I even said, because Andre's comparison for this movie was if Ragnarok was Batman Forever, then Love and Thunder is definitely Batman and Robin. And he's also been comparing it lately to like Lady in the Water in that era of M. Night Shyamalan films, and I agree with him. I'm like, this feels like one of those mid to late 90s comic book movies after the Batman craze was dying down, and just before we got to X-Men and Spider-Man, because there was a load of bad comic book movies that they were just throwing out there, and they just didn't quite get it. And it almost killed the idea of the comic book movie before it even got technically started, because at that point, you know, it just really wasn't that often that we got those movies. Like, because it was 10 years between Superman and Batman pretty much, and there was a couple in between there as far as sequels and some other ones, but nothing to the amount that we have now, where it's like, you know, 3 year, you know, we have 3 movies every year as opposed to 3 years between every movie, right? Like,
yeah, well, not just that. You got 3 movies a year and 3 to 4 Disney Plus series, and you probably should have seen everything in order to keep up. I think it's just burnout. I really think it is. I think it's too much. I mean, first of all, in my mind's eye as a kid, I never thought I'd see a Thor movie that was decent, right? Or that we're arguing one is better than the other. There are 4 Thor movies and will likely be a 5th one. So, but I do think we're experiencing a bit of Taika fatigue. I think we're all just, you know what I mean? Like, I think I'll have to tweet that. But I mean, it's just
actually, I coined that, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Taika fatigue. We're just over it. Like, that's why, it just made so much sense. Like, don't stop making Marvel movies. Just make different ones. Why don't you, there's just so much more they could have done. Just ended at Endgame or maybe one movie after. Go back and just tell a decade of stories from the 60s, which I think that the X-Men would be so much better in the 60s just because it's obviously talking about prejudice. All the X-Men comics are in some way about prejudice in some form. And it's better to go back to the 60s and tell those stories, in my opinion.
First Class got it right by making its setting in the 60s.
Yes, it's my favorite X-Men movie, and it's not directed by Bryan Singer.
Yeah, so, it's Matthew Vaughn, right?
Matthew Vaughn, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure
so
right,
I don't know. I just think it's too much. These things are going to continue, and the slide will be like, minimal. Like, okay, it doesn't make $1 billion; it makes $750 million. I think you could still consider that a success. I know some people are criticizing Campea. That's his positioning on that, and that's fine for him to do that. It is technically it's the most successful Thor movie if you consider Thor a sort of sub franchise to Marvel. I think it's fine. I mean, look, all I can say is this, especially if you know anything about politics and how they manipulate the data to get not just the answer they want, the statistics that they want, and believe it, they do it in Hollywood too. They do it in Hollywood too, to position something as the number 1 or the first movie of blah, blah, blah. Like, everybody wants something that's press releasable.
Well, they need something. They need the easiest. They go for the easiest talking point to advertise the film, as opposed to the most impressive. And that comes down to the fact that for at least the last 6 or so Marvel films, and you can probably go back a little bit further, they're a bit more designed and executed like an assembly process, as opposed to what story are we telling? How do we tell it the best we can? It feels more not necessarily formulaic, although there is a significant Marvel formula in there. It just feels like it's missing that stamp of a voice from either the director or the writer, because it's not quite there. Taika does have the stamp of a voice with regards to Thor Ragnarok, and I'm sure that it's also in Thor Love and Thunder, but is that the type of voice that's best appropriate for this type of character? Like, you have to marry those things together for symbiosis. I think Jon Favreau was the perfect person for a voice for doing Iron Man. I think that was the sweet spot, and I think Joe Johnston was excellent for Captain America. The difference being is that those 2 directors are rather pricey, even though Joe Johnston not getting as much work as I think he should. And Marvel doesn't want to invest in them, under Disney at least, because they don't want to foot that bill. So they get these more newer, fresher, up-and-coming directors who then use Marvel as a calling card to build up their price, and then they never return to Marvel after that. Like, you think Taika is probably coming back to Thor again after this. I bet he's going to do two other movies of his own that's going to allow him to cement his own career and not have to worry about Marvel. And if he does come back to Marvel, it's going to come with a hefty price tag, which I don't know if Disney's willing to negotiate with.
Yeah,
because the Russo brothers aren't coming back.
Well, they've been rumored again to be interested in possibly coming back, but that's a whole nother story. But speaking of up and coming, we have an up and coming YouTuber, Mr. That 70s Rock Fan, hanging out in the back, who's also one of our mods as well. How you doing this morning?
I'm great, sir. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all well.
Good morning. We're in the middle of super chats right now. Hope you don't mind.
Carry on, sir.
We got one from Shadow Dancer, another big $50 smackaroo one here. It says Ragnarok was not funny. Thor was a steamroller from credits to credits. Eye slashed, hammer fractured, friends slaughtered, all father abandoned and dead, home destroyed. It was a character cruelty. P.S. Korg does mention a mother in the dialogue. Yes, I remember that. And of course,
that's it. Yeah.
I totally understand why people feel this way, but I unapologetically love the film for its humor, its reverence, for its look, for all the other things. For
the brother
characters. Not only that, all those things he described are challenges for Thor to overcome, which he does. That's what you want a movie to be about. Yeah. You don't want a hero to be passively kicking everyone's butt, because that's Captain Marvel.
Right.
So you want to give something challenging to your main character. Otherwise, we don't connect and we don't care if they win or lose.
That is true as well. But I mean, I also understand how some people were. In fact, that's part of the reason why I'm not surprised by this box office. But I think it has
the dichotomy of the older sister beating up the younger brother, because that's a common trait in families.
After the father dies too, right? It's like they're pretty much. It's like, I don't know, going over the inheritance, and she wants to kick ass to get it.
Yeah. Well, and technically, she's rightfully the heir.
Yeah.
Because
I'm just reminding of other dichotomies when, like, the older sister says, let's see who can hold her breath the longest in a pillow. And then the younger brother does hold their breath in the pillow, but the sister's just breathing and just torturing the brother. Because that's what, siblings do.
That is my life experience, yes.
Yeah. I also like to say quickly, I have children. I understand what people are saying that in the chat. I understand why Gore did what he did. Don't get me wrong. I thought it was good. I thought he did great with what he had. I understood why. I'm done with the sympathetic one. I want a bad guy. That's all. That's all I'm saying. Sorry about that.
That's kind of why I liked Hella or whatever.
Yeah.
Like she was just flat out like, fuck it, I'm bad. She has a reason to be bad, but she's also just kind of unapologetically bad. Like, she knows what she's doing.
Well, she has a goal. Look, this is mine. I helped him create it. He then trapped me. Now he's dead. I'm taking it back, and I'll kill anyone who gets in my way with a little flair. I liked it. I like what I like. That's the beauty of our fellowship. We don't have to agree on what we like and dislike. I just, that's what I like. And I'm sorry that I have.
No, but I do understand how some people didn't like what happened to the character. That's for sure.
Right.
And then going back to the top of the super chats, Gabriel Knight says, "Shout out to Eric July and the Rippaverse big debut." Yeah, I think what's the number at now, Culture?
Oh, it's over 500,000. I mean,
over 500,000. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this thing fully funded. Before the first hour was over. I think.
What's even awesome is I heard that he already had everything ready to go, so it's not like there's a big wait for this either. And Gabriel also highly encourages anyone who is a comic book reader to go check this out. Yes, indeed. Yep. Callum Lyle's in the house and says Zeus looked like Don Slip in a skirt. Then they should have used Gore to explain what happened to the Egyptian gods, and I have bad feelings about Hercules.
I agree with them on that. I brought that up too. Like, the Egyptian gods were murdered, but we don't know really what was happening. Gore could have explained a lot that they were doing in the series, but they don't connect them. It's like one does one thing and another does another, and they're like, whatever.
Yeah. And then we have Callum Lyle again, who says, because Hercules is married to Zeus, cupbearer, but now for some reason he's a Pride Month hero.
What's Hercules is gay? I didn't get that. I mean, he's a great actor.
That's their father and son.
Hercules is married to Zeus's cupbearer, so the cupbearer is the woman.
Oh, the cupbearer. Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
Holds his chalices and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's supposed to be what he means.
I have to say, I do like me either. I do like the actor that plays Hercules. A lot of people didn't like him, but he is a good actor. He's in That.
Oh, in the comics he is gay now.
In the comics.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That must be recent because he was flirting with She-Hulk during the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, it is. I would
Everyone's
more
fluid,
recent.
so.
Well, she's based on a trans character now, so.
And then he adds as well. Thank you again, Callum. Who says, also, did you see that Warrior Lady King trailer? It's pure revisionist history propaganda because I read the woman fought for slavery and was for it.
Yeah.
I think he fought. I think
he means fought. Yeah.
Yeah, I've not seen this yet, but I'll have to check that out, Callum. But no, I have not seen it. That's the first.
What do you mean the Wooden King?
He said the Warrior. I don't know. I just pulled it down now. So, the Walt Man says, I saw Thor yesterday and thought it had some moments. I like the goats. Well, you're one of the few people who did.
I did. I
most likely to underperform in the end. Yes.
The goats were so annoying. I loved it.
That's kind of where we're at right now with that. And then I think we said this already, but thank you for being a member, Silver Nova. And Zontar says 2 years to see results in 3 years too long. Yeah. And then we also had Duck Nation as a member for 13 months. Thank you for that. Dr. Long Dongler sent us a super sticker. Let me see what it was here. It was a thumbs up. Thank you for that, Dr. Long Dongler. Hypergiver says, by Odin's fade, it's a stinker. Yes. Indeed it is. Kenneth LaRock has been a member for 15 months and says, hey all. Thank you for that, Kenneth. And Scott is on the panel, but he's also been a member for 15 months. Wow. And Darius Munchausen sent us some salt. That salt must be from some of those fans who are upset. Das Wolfen has been a member for 8 months. Thank you for that. And then Last Millennial says, script. Taika is asking Natalie to be in a Star Wars movie and saying they changed Gore's look because he looked too much like Voldemort. Stupid much on his part? Well, that's a good question. Script, what do you say, since it's directed at you?
He's just being foolish. I mean, that's his brand, is to blatantly, obviously be foolish. I mean, never take anything seriously from Taika Waititi. My God, he literally advertises himself to not be taken seriously all the time, or actually at any time. Even his stuff with regards to director's cuts. I mean, you can't take that seriously. He's just doing it to stay in the conversation.
He's a big.
I think he's trolling. Yeah. I don't believe that story about Star Wars.
You're smarter than that. Everybody listening to this, you're smarter.
No, if you read the quote, he's clearly saying it just so he can dump on the prequels.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then as far as the Gore thing, I think they just cheaped out. I think they didn't want to do the CGI, and the movie was already over expensive, to be honest with you.
I heard that the Gore's look was a scheduling issue with Christian Bale. Like, in order to start the movie, there just wasn't time to design a character that complex, so they came up with this look, which is it's actually fine. Yeah, I guess look, Christian Bale's probably the best part of the movie, so it's fine by me, so they whatever. Yeah.
Nah, yeah. As far as the Voldemort thing, though, I've heard the talk about it, but how many villains look like that? That's pretty classic villain look. Shadow Dancer, the Red Mange, sent us $10 as well earlier and says, I saw Thor 4. It was a decent story muddled by the wrong director. The same way Justice League was handed from Snyder to Whedon, and Kubrick's AI was emotional mush in Spielberg's hands. Well, we never know what the other one of Kubrick's situation was going to be, but yeah, I see the Snyder to Whedon kind of comparison here. But again, at this point, this movie, whether you liked Ragnarok or not, I think it's a failure. I think that speaks more to it than the other way around. But yeah. And then Scott says, thank you for supporting Midnight's Edge. Thank you, Midnight's Edge, for supporting the little guys in this YouTube game. Also, Thor sucked. Well, thank you for that, Scott. And then we got Liam Smith here, who says, are you planning to talk about the rumored Bob Chapek meeting Kareem Daniel to discuss moderating Disney in France? We hadn't really planned on it today, though. That might be something that comes up on one of our other conversations, likely the Tuesday tirade, or maybe a pop-up and meet or something like that. Yep. I'm sure that's been on Culture's radar for sure.
Yep.
But not likely today, Liam, because we are already running overtime, and we have another main topic yet to discuss that's kind of related to this. And we got Willie Woodward in the chat. How you doing, buddy? Who's also a wrench and a member. Says, hail chat and panel. Mr. Gore, thanks for the recommendation of Black Phone. Great horror movie. Writers, check out Script Doctors Consulting. It's good.
Thank you, Willie.
And yeah, you kind of called it on Black Phone. That did pretty well that weekend it opened up there. I think.
Yeah, and especially for what they spent. So
yeah,
that movie is a hit. So there you go.
Yeah, and it didn't even have to hit number one. It just had to do what it did, and it sounds like it's delivering for the fans, and the horror fans will come out for you if it's a decent movie. So
Blumhouse,
hell yeah.
And not only that, this is the movie that the what's his name, the director chose to do over Doctor Strange 2, or at least
the guy that bailed. Oh gosh,
Scott Derrickson.
Derrickson, yeah, I was gonna say Dickerson, but not Derrickson. Then Brian Paniguay. I wish I knew how to say your name, Brian.
Paniagua.
There you go. Thor 4 looks like an adult film parody. Yes, this is exactly it. The whole thing comes off like a bad. It does, and this is what my review was, Chris. It's just like those not another teen movie type humors.
It's a parody of a parody.
It is.
No, it's like an Axel Braun movie. If anyone looks up the work of Axel.
Oh, those are better. Actually, that's kind of demeaning to his work.
Captain Marvel by Axel Braun is better than.
I was just gonna say it's a way better film. Yeah,
I've only gotten through 15 minutes of it, but it's still
even with the nudity cut out, it's still a better movie. That's what I'm saying. Like,
and that's after watching it 7 times.
7 times or so. Yeah. Yes. Well, maybe 15.
In different settings, but still. At like 15-minute increments.
Yeah, yes. 1 minute. Anyways.
But no, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree with Brian here on this. Chad Repnerine says, I feel like showing restraint with successful franchise would be good showmanship. Do you guys think that's lacking in a sense of showmanship? Maybe. I mean, I think I get what you're saying here, Chad. And yeah, I feel like there's it's getting easier to get stuff out there quicker, and especially when, like, kind of going back to what we were saying before, where it used to be like 3 years between when we get like a comic book movie or one of these big sci-fi tentpole films, and now we get 3 or 4 a year in comparison. So in that respect, yes, the quality is gonna lack, and we're not gonna get the awe out of it like we used to, because it was a big deal when the first Avengers came out and came together. Like, now that's kind of quaint, right? And Infinity War really raised that, and that's what I said before too, is it raised that bar so high now that was a problem we've had with a lot of these films since, is you just sit there and kind of go, well, what are you going to do next? Like Far From Home was close, and it's probably the closest we've come since then to an actual success, both critically and financially.
Yeah, and I'll add a word to showmanship: stewardship.
Yeah,
stewardship. I think both showmanship and stewardship were well represented in no way.
No,
this what I've been thinking, culture, though, is where does Phase 4 feel like it's going, and do they even need this phase concept? Why not just
phase the phases out,
phase out the phases, and just make individual storylines?
This was
rather than having to pretend they've got some kind of grand vision.
70s,
you kill your marketing that way, because the concept with the phases is that you have to watch everything in order to know what's happening. It's just they're basically using a binge model of television, which with Marvel, the thing that hurt them is when they started doing more than 2 films a year. That's when the quality started to decline, because ideally what you'd really want to do is you want to have a department focused on each of your principal characters that's going to be running your sub-franchise within your Marvel brand. So you're like, okay, we're going to do an Iron Man movie every 3 years. We're going to do a Captain America movie every 3 years, Thor movie every 3 years, and so forth. And you schedule it out so it goes year 1, Iron Man, year 2, Cap, year 3, Thor, and then it cycles through again and again. Or you do it in a different thing where you start the summer off with one hero, and then you close out the summer with the other hero, and you do that on an every year cycle. But there's
one for summer, one for Christmas, or something like that.
Yeah, or fall, really, because Christmas is usually always a harder market to do. But you want to just make sure that you space it out to the point where you're getting 2 characters from Marvel a year, but they're not the same characters, and they don't cycle through until, you know, every so many years, because you're giving each department enough time to really make the best possible product they can for that debut of that film.
Yeah. So what do you say to this, Chris? Sorry, I wanted to get Chris's reaction to this, especially when it comes to showmanship. Or did Chris step away?
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay. There you are. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I was just curious what your reaction to this super chat was on screen right now.
Oh, sorry. Chad Roop-Nareen for 5 says, I feel like showing restraint with a successful franchise would be good showmanship. Do you guys think that's what's lacking, is a sense of showmanship? Well, just sort of understanding. I think George Lucas understood that less is more, right? That we talked about, I think last week, like a minor character on screen just spurs the imagination, like Aura Singh from episode 1, who's on screen all of 3 seconds, right? And that spawned comic books and, 12-inch action figures, other action figures, like it just like the kind of world building that George Lucas did. He built a world. Now you're milking it to death, and you see the effects of that, right? You see the diminishing returns of doing that and not showing restraint. Not showing restraint would be Obi-Wan and Darth not fighting. Maybe having an exchange of words, but not dueling, that ended with something as simple as Vader saying, if you ever leave this world, Tatooine, the sands which have where my mother died, I will kill you. I will end you. I will destroy you. And leaving it on a dramatic note rather than 2 lame-ass fights, breaking canon, this dumb shit with Leia, oh God, that actress was terrible. I'm sorry. I don't care.
Thank you.
I know it sounds cruel to say, oh, the kid, you know what? Those parents are, and the director made a terrible choice to choose that actor. I thought the kid who played Luke was awful as well. It just, to me, showing restraint. George Lucas made these 3 movies, but built so much around it. Comic books, video games, novels, the expanded universe. Look at what Star Wars, 3 movies spawned before we even got to, the prequel trilogy. Right. Just the mountain of stuff. I mean, sure, there were the cheesy Ewok spinoff TV movies. There were 2 of those. They were not very good. But I also think I still have them on Laserdisc. But
I got one.
But you know what I'm saying? It's just like showing some kind of restraint in the sense of, like less is more. Like I think what we're seeing with Marvel is more is boring, and more is, as I'm watching this, thinking to myself, I don't care. I reached a point where and I think a lot more and more friends of mine are saying, like, I'm kind of over Marvel. These are normies that are just like, I don't need to see the next thing because I just feel like I don't want to get sucked in. It's kind of like, a television series when they get to like the 4th season and you're talking about how, well, the first season was great. Yes, Caravan of Courage and Battle for Endor. Thank you, Bill Barkley. But, once you reach a certain point, this stuff just you can't do 25 seasons. If anything, that's what destroyed The Walking Dead, right? Like The Walking Dead was just like, I don't know. It's sort of like whenever I talk to anyone, it's like, what season did you check out? Because it was just too much. And I kind of feel
Episode 2
exactly. Well,
1.
I went 9.
There you go.
I'm still watching
it. But I stepped through I stuck with it all the way through The Governor. But after The Governor left, I stopped. Like I didn't. So, and that was 3 seasons. So I think really that's where we're at with Marvel is you're going to see a great opening weekend and you're going to see some of the biggest drop-offs because I feel the people who see it opening weekend are the huge fans. And if it doesn't have big word of mouth, it's not going to go anywhere or it's not going to have repeat business because I'm not seeing Thor again. Thor again. So
I don't think a lot of people will be.
No.
And I think that's and I think another thing with the showmanship, I think we'll see how Avatar plays out this Christmas too.
Can I say something real quick? Because Culture nailed it before. Culture nailed it by saying stewardship. When you have somebody at the helm of any of these massive franchises or IPs like Star Wars, like Marvel, like Lord of the Rings, that actually cares about the product and the to the fans, the sacred canon that it is. George, even though he wasn't making movies after the first 3 for a while, he was making sure he okayed what books could be made, what comic books, and that kept it alive until he was ready to make his movies. Christopher Tolkien, kept his father's, the honor of those books. He could have made a fortune. I mean, a mega fortune selling that off to commercials and stuff, but he kept it because he honored what his father created. These people that then buy it, or the generations have passed, they just see dollar signs and don't really give a crap what you do with it. So Culture nailed it. It's the stewardship.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also the responsibility. You don't have to love the franchise, but you have to be responsible enough to not destroy it. Yeah. And also put your ego aside. I mean, that's one of the things. There is a wall of divide between a fan and a creator. And rarely do fans overcome that wall to become creators. When they do, it's glorious. But when they don't, it doesn't mean that they're not fans anymore. They're still very valuable. But you cannot conflate the two, because as a creator, one of the rules is you got to kill your babies. Now, not literally, but it just means that you've got to put those characters in challenges you may not agree with. But the responsibility is that you don't let them fail at those challenges. You let them overcome and be better for it on the same direction and same trajectory that they were when you fell in love with them as a fan. It's a difficult process to achieve. It's why writing is very difficult, but that's usually the goal you have to have. And if you don't believe me, you can see all the fan films on YouTube. The majority of them are not great. And the ones that are few and far between, and there's a reason for that.
Well, the Kenobi one is pretty good, though.
There are some decent ones, but again, and I'm not a huge fan of fan films in general either, but at the same time, I admire the ambition they have. But every time somebody brings one up to me, I tell them, don't do anything that's already an IP. I know you're not going to get the attention the other thing is, but that's basically a death note, right? Like right there, you're never going to get into the industry if you do something better than the industry in their own IP. Now, if you do something else to get their attention, maybe then they'll be interested in your new IP. But build yourself your own audience in that case. And I know it's a little off.
On top of that, the odds of the fan doing something better than the IP holder is incredibly minimal. Like, it's not happening.
But just in general, though, I'm just saying. But on the point of Endgame here, Shadow Dancer the Red Mage says, if time travel of Endgame had opened the door to Kang and the resolution of that story had fractured into multiverses, that might have been made more narrative sense, one focus at a time. And this is what I was getting to earlier is, unfortunately, the focus was completely derailed. And a lot of this was just kind of patchwork. And even Spider-Man No Way Home was kind of an accident, right? It came about mainly because they were competing with the idea of Michael Keaton coming back to play Batman in The Flash. So this was their response. They just got lucky and got it out there quick enough because they have a machine that's already in motion. And with Sony being involved, that helped even more to probably speed up the process.
I'm not sure anyone will necessarily agree with me, Tom, but I get the feeling with Marvel now, since certainly Phase 4, that they kind of feel to me like 1940s potboiler serials in cinema, like Charlie Chan or The Thin Man, and they just keep churning these out for diminishing returns because they've got a brand. It doesn't really hang
kind of.
It just
and that goes along with the McDonaldization. But Scott needs to leave us, so thank you for being here, Scott. We appreciate you hopping in.
I'm sorry, guys. I love being on with you. It's rare that I'm home from work, so I took the advantage of it. So thank you very much. Chris, it was really nice meeting you. I appreciate you, and 70s rock fan too.
Nice to meet you too.
Nice to meet you too. Script and Culture. Love you guys.
Like you don't know them.
Well, I love those guys. What I'm saying
we know you.
Yes. What I'm saying is I'm one of the smaller YouTubers and I need some subs, so help a brother out, okay?
Your channel's bigger than mine, man.
Is it really?
I can only sub to you 3 times, Scott.
Well, make a couple more. Make a couple more. But hey, we got good YouTubers on my show.
Every day he's hustling.
Hey, Tom, you show up. You show up on my show, Culture Script sometimes.
Dump, yes.
Yeah, Nerdrotic and Drunk and Ryan and maybe Chris someday. That'd be awesome. And, D-Day Cobra, if he ever can settle down and give me a date. Anyways, but really, thank you for having me, man. I love you guys. I know. I've been trying for 6 months. He said he appreciates my dedication.
That's his way of saying no, but yes.
Yeah. But I thank you guys. Tonight we have a show about ancient ruins. So tonight's our conspiracy, ancient history, and UFO type thing. So we're doing ancient underground ruins and what they were really meant for. But
I thought you were talking about me there.
Yeah, you never know, buddy. You never know.
Ruins.
But if you want to see anything, please make sure you see the Saturday Dump. Culture will tell you we have some great YouTubers on. I don't know why they keep showing up, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. Lots of brilliant minds at work.
Hell yeah, man. Thank you so much,
take
guys.
care of yourself, Scott.
Pleasure
have
seeing you all. Bye.
And then Carrie's has been a member for a year, it looks like, but they upgraded their membership. Thank you for that, Carrie's. Then Mr. Grant Gregory's in the house and says, "Hail, Tim, Chris here. Culture crusting stripped doctor and squirting nudes podcast." Yes, indeed.
The Australian mind at work.
Yeah, and I think we got this one, but thank you again, Daniel, for that. And then Callum Lyle says, "Tom, I sent you this. What if Doctor Strange was good in your DM? It's not very long. If you like to share it, tell me what you think." And I'll tell you what. If we get some time near the end of the show, I'll bring it up. I did take a look at it real quick, but we're kind of behind schedule right now. So if we get some time later, I'll check it out and maybe read it on the air. If not, maybe we'll do it tomorrow on Mead. Actually,
there you go.
If not. Stargate 404 says, "Did anyone else find themselves rooting for Gore? Nearly all the gods, with the exception of a couple of enormous assholes, and they don't care about their people, self-preservation, or the universe at large." Oh yeah, well, I mean, they do a very good job of making Gore look like he has a good reason to be doing what he's doing beyond his own personal reasons. But in that respect. But
I haven't seen the film. Not going to see the film. Apathetic at best.
And then Stargate 404 says that they did Bale did too good a job making Gore sympathetic and interesting, only to turn him into 4 different personalities later in the film. Absolutely. Yes, this is one thing where I had an issue with, and at least they did address one plot hole problem I had without getting into spoilers. But at least they set it up to where he's obviously thought about it, even though it's the first time anybody else in the movie's thought about it. But I'm not going to get into that part because you clearly probably know what I'm talking about. And then he also says, "Between the Boys," which criticizes one side more than the other, Terminal List, The Offer, Amazon is becoming one of the best streaming platforms, which is kind of funny because if you knew some of the stuff I do behind the scenes, these are anomalies and not the or their exception and not the rules, let's say.
And The Offer, I mean, it's also on Paramount Plus too.
Yeah, so The Offer is actually a Paramount Plus, so that's true.
Yeah, go watch The Offer. It's very good.
Brilliant show, yeah.
But yes, you can get Paramount Plus and a lot of other things through Amazon as well. But Olaf Venice says they claim the Lord of the Rings made as much as Ragnarok made as
that's Thor Love and Thunder.
Oh, Thor Love and Thunder. Jesus Christ, what am I doing? Made as much as Ragnarok made as yet prices went up 50% for movie tickets this year. Check Valiant Renegade's video on Thor. Yeah, I saw, I didn't see the video, but I did see this report anyway, let's say. And yeah, basically they're not even taking this stuff into consideration. And yes, movie tickets have inflated beyond what they should be at this point. But I paid $20 just for one ticket.
That's average in Canada in some places.
Yeah. Oh, it's more than that. Yeah.
And Tim Hayes has been a member for 13 months. Thank you for that. Gwildor's Life Matters says, "Chris, you hear Chris?
Yep.
Just recently watched Odd Thomas. Curious if you'd seen it and your thoughts. Some of the rest of the panel as well."
I have not seen Odd Thomas. I don't know what Odd Thomas is. So I see a lot of weird stuff. Seen a lot of weird things, but I've not seen
Looks like a 2013 film.
Yeah, it's an older film if it's the same one.
Yeah. Has Anton Yelchin in it? Willem Dafoe. Yeah. No, I haven't seen that either.
No, I haven't seen it. Mulder's Life Matters. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Anyone else see it?
No, but I'm looking at it now. It's got Willem Dafoe and Anton Yelchin in it.
It actually looks reasonably interesting. It's a Dean Koontz novel.
Oh, interesting. Oh, I'll have to check that out. Thank you for the recommendation. Ugh, I can talk. The Master Clockwork, who's been a member for 16 months at the Edgelord level, says, I feel insulted on behalf of Saturday morning cartoons. Anything Avengers cartoons were better than this shit. Yeah, that's true. I'm talking about like the bottom of the barrel Saturday morning cartoons, though, as far as that goes. And then we got the Red Lines, who says, when you have a subplot where two Rockman people of literally, I think he means of the same sex, literally embrace each other for a month to have a kid, you miss the mark on what Marvel fans care about, downward spiral. Yeah, it's all kind of just for one, actually kind of like two jokes in the whole movie, basically.
Yeah, and everything's a joke in them now. Everything's a joke.
Then Lamar Smith says Thor is going to make 900 million like Doctor Strange, and they'll make another trillion on Disney Plus. The MCU is alive and well. You think so, Lamar? I'm not so sure on that. It's already underperforming from Doctor Strange, and it has a lot more competition. I don't see it going up in the next couple weeks. I think that that's some.
The drop off is going to be huge. Yeah,
it's going to be a tall order for them to pull that off.
See, and I would normally agree with you, but Andre pointed something out to me, 70s, that because this film didn't open as big as they wanted it to projection-wise, yes, the drop-off will be substantial, but it's not going to be equal to like the fall-off for Doctor Strange 2 with a 60-some% fall, because it's not capable of it. Didn't have enough money up front. And I think Chris already talked about this. It didn't really do, gangbusters at the opening, and that usually isn't a good sign for its long-term legs. So,
as somebody else remarked, very little rewatchability. I mean,
that's Chris. Yeah,
Chris said that.
Chris said that, yeah.
And on that note, we're going to be losing Chris soon, so I want to get to the second story we have. We'll get back to the super chats here shortly, guys. Sorry, for now I just turned Canadian there for a minute. Sorry about that, eh? Here's another issue that's going to be coming up, Chris, and I'm really glad to have you here today because I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Most of all, when Deadpool came out a couple years back, remember they boasted how Deadpool was able to make the movie on such a low budget, and then they turned around and got sued by the special effects companies because they never paid them.
Right, because they just underpaid for everything. It's like slated.
Well, that's happening again, let's say, or continuing to happen is more of a better way of putting it. So real quickly, Culture, if you could take us through this story.
You bet.
And then we'll get the reaction to folks. I think this is going to be another issue that they're going to be running into in the coming months and years. When it comes to Marvel films, and not just Marvel films, but tentpole films in general.
Yeah, and again, this has a lot of these effects houses are being acquired by these studios, which makes them unavailable to other studios. Theoretically, but we'll get going. VFX artists are refusing to work with Marvel due to stress and unrealistic deadlines. VFX artists call Marvel the worst client to work for. This is just from a couple of days ago, and it's this story speaks volumes. VFX artists are speaking out against Marvel, with many refusing to ever work with the entertainment giant again. This comes as artists share accounts of unworkable deadlines and immense pressure, leading to stress and unsatisfactory final products. Many have requested to never be put on a Marvel project again, saying the studio has the worst VFX management out there. These allegations have been made on the subreddit r/VFX, with artists across the industry sharing their negative experiences with the company. Almost no one in the subreddit has a good word to say about the employer, with many saying that the money and star power aren't worth tolerating such poor working conditions. In a thread titled, "I'm quite frankly sick and tired of working on Marvel shows," Reddit user Independent 8419 expressed their frustration with the studio. Marvel has probably the worst methodology of production and VFX management out there, they write. They can never fix the look for the show before more than half the allocated time for the show is over. The artists working on Marvel shows are definitely not paid the equivalent to the amount of work they put in. Other replies quickly agree. On Thor, they ask for a complete mini sequence 2 or 3 weeks before the deadline, claims Sam FX 2015. That's interesting. Mickey Moo's account is much the same. I request to not work on Marvel movies and TV shows. Unfortunately, they're becoming our biggest client. They expect a smorgasbord of options so they can change their mind 3 more times. You want me to continue?
Where's the management of these SFX houses? That
was my question script right away when I read this too. I'm like, I get what they're coming from with this, but I hate to say that this is not Disney's fault. This is the companies who are saying yes to these bids, right? Like, or taking the jobs and not telling them that it's going to cost this much more, or, you know, it's whatever deal they're making with Disney. It's not Disney's fault per se, but anyway,
Disney has demands, and a VFX studio is saying, "Sure, we'll meet that," and then
exactly
actually can't. Yeah. That's I'm sorry, that's on the VFX side.
Exactly, yeah.
And I would actually say this mirrors the experience of people in a multitude of industries, not just in the movie industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, the most obvious one we talked about last night: video games.
Yes, and this is parallel to video games, yeah.
And it also shows bad project management skills on behalf of the younger generation.
Stewardship.
Stewardship.
That's going to be the theme of the day.
The product management.
Yeah, I'll roll through this. Those who haven't been able to avoid working with Marvel confirm that it hasn't improved in recent years. I'm almost 3 years straight of Marvel. Welcome to the 7th level of hell. Another user shares their time at Marvel has been a black hole of sleep deprivation and eating bad. Another thread from 3 months ago contains even more damning accounts of what it's like to work with Marvel. These allegations were shared when another VFX artist was disappointed to lose out on the opportunity to work with Marvel, something their industry peers reassured them was no great loss. Someone else here, Rand DVR, says, I am on my 3rd Marvel project in a row and literally just woke up at 5:30 a.m. on a Saturday going, I don't want to do this anymore. It's 6 a.m. now, and I'm making a reel to apply someplace that has projects other than Marvel because I can't do this anymore. Well, there you go.
You roboted a bit at the end there, but basically, yeah, like people have had enough. They're moving on from this. And again, I got to agree with Script. This is more of the effects companies saying they'll do this or giving bids that are too low with too little time to get the shit done. Yeah. Or not standing up to some of these guys and saying, look, you can't ask for 5 options and not take one of the 5 options. This isn't like, you know, you can look at the 5 options and say, go do this. And that's another side too. And that's kind of what I wanted to get to, especially from Chris's point of view, because I'm noticing, and this is a big issue I've noticed with Thor specifically, is just how bad the effects are and how they, because I think this is the first Marvel movie to really use the what's it called, the stagecraft
and the volume technology.
Yes. Yeah. And they even have a bit going on right now where Tessa Thompson and Taika Waititi are talking about the VFX in the film and how shitty they look. And it's like they're just sitting there talking about this shit like whatever. It's like just how nonchalantly they're talking about it. And I look, I have given a lot of shit to some CGI, but I know that a lot of work goes into this. And when you've got people that are doing this and they're saying this right now, there is a breakdown of communication between the studios and the VFX companies themselves, the heads of, or whoever's making these deals. And right now I see where this is gotta come to a head. Do they not have a guild or something like that, Script? Or a union of some type for the...
No, the special effects and CGI companies aren't unionized. I mean, set decorators, props, all those other things, they do have their unions.
That's what I was thinking.
Unions. But VFX does not. They're very much independent, private. They don't coordinate with many people.
So that's probably part of the problem.
That's a big part of it. The other part too is I think Disney has a contract with ILM, but I don't know if they actually got ILM in the Disney.
No, they did. As far as I know, I think they own ILM, but here's the thing. They haven't been utilizing them in-house as much because they'll end up farming ILM out to other studios. And
yeah,
then
they can make more money farming them out than
exactly. And then they'll use these other little studios that'll and here's what I think is the biggest crutch of the problem here. Is that it's not so much Disney's fault, and again, as we said, it's these companies saying they'll do this for Disney, aka Marvel, and doing it in such a short period of time for such a small amount of money, and they're doing it just to say that they're working on a Marvel movie, and that's one of the things that one of the people pointed out in the Reddit thing was it's not even worth it anymore to be able to put this on my resume,
right?
And they're like, we have friends that come up to us and say, "Oh, I wish I could work on Marvel," and we're like, "No, you don't."
Yeah.
So that's kind of what it sounds like. But this also goes along with part of it is Kevin Feige's fault. I'm going to say this too, because I've heard this from people who work within that area too. And I'm sure Culture's heard similar things. Yeah. And that is Feige keeps shit very close to the chest, and he likes to not say shit until the last minute, or he has specific times when things will go out, and they really give them a very small window to do these things.
And that is a huge project management issue, because unless you've got a defined scope to work towards, what are you actually doing and what are you going to fulfill? You need, I'm a professional project manager for years, you've got to have an endpoint. Even if you have sprinting towards it, you still have to have an endpoint that's defined. If you leave that open-ended, this is what you're going to get.
So yeah, was there any more of the article left, Culture? Otherwise, I think we kind of got the gist of it.
Oh yeah, just a couple more quotes. Let's see, from Mickey Moo once again shared a particularly shocking account of their time working with the studio. Marvel has seen grown men punch walls and throw monitors for stress. I broke down a couple of times and have seen the strain it can put on marriages. But hey, the money was fantastic. F Marvel as a client, and the credit name is not effing worth it. I used it. Yeah. But
well, one person at least said the money was fantastic, so at least getting paid decent. It sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah. This other person says Rastlinik, I guess, agrees. It took me over 6 months to recover from WandaVision's crunch. It's not worth it. Not when there's better run projects that look just as good out there. So there you go. That was basically the end of the article.
So Chris, since go ahead.
Oh yeah. No, I heard everything. I think that the problem is what this is going to result in is that Marvel is not going to be attracting the best talent. You know, if assuming
we're already seeing that.
We're seeing that
exactly. I mean, look at She-Hulk, right? Like, yeesh,
yeah, I commented on Gary's. Yeah,
look at Ms. Marvel. You know, like it's not attracting they're not attracting the best talent. Even Thor, there's a shot. And for those of you who haven't seen it, now that I pointed out, or you can even see this scene online, there's a scene where Thor is walking next to Jane Foster Thor, right? She has the helmet on. And it's one of those things, whenever I get an opportunity to see a movie twice, I always make it a point to focus on something where your eye isn't supposed to be. Meaning, like, a lot of times when they say movie magic, it is truly magic. And the secret to magic is deflection. Your eye should be looking here when the trick is being performed, you know, somewhere else, like, you know, sleight of hand, right? So that the same is true with special effects. So a lot of times I'll kind of focus or look at things you're not supposed to look at, and you discover lots of interesting things. One of the things I looked at very carefully was Jane Foster's helmet. When she's dressed in that outfit, the helmet, I'm looking at it, I'm going, why does it look bad? Why does it, why does it not look real? And it looked like a bad Instagram filter where you have mouse ears, you know, like,
because that's kind of what it is.
It's kind of jittery. It's tracking, but it's not perfect. And the reason it stood out to me is because the lighting on her eyes was so good. Like, her eyes were lit very well. If that was in fact a real physical prop, a helmet that she was wearing, it would have been difficult to light her eyes. In addition, she'd be wearing that helmet for every take, right? She
not
probably
only that,
had
reflecting. Go ahead.
Be reflecting things, whatever. Like, it just creates problems. Like, all right, fine, wear this green screen cap with dots on it. You're wearing a helmet. You know what I mean? Like so, and I think that Marvel's gotten incredibly lazy using this stupid thing where it started with Star-Lord, right? Like with Star-Lord, it was this cool thing they introduced where his face mask appears and disappears, assuming with some sort of nanotechnology, and that's cool. Now it's overused in every movie. It's in every Marvel movie now. It's become like a Marvel thing of like, well, you just snap your fingers. Yeah, it's like they do it. It's now gotten lazy, and now we just accept it. And it's like, no. I remember the Flash used to have like his entire outfit was like in his ring or something, and it would just sort of expand out. He'd have to get in the outfit, or whatever. They're just like, everyone's just stealing this idea and overusing it, and it's lazy to me. But look at that scene. I'm sure it's on YouTube. It's just Jane Foster talking to Thor. They're walking side by side. She has a helmet on, and the helmet looks like a fucking filter from Instagram. To me, right? Like, not a very good filter, right?
No, you're 100% right, because it is pretty much.
That's what it is.
15 years ago, they would have actually fabricated like a blue screen helmet, like a physical helmet that was blue, put it on her, light it, and then use basically a chroma key effect to give it the reflection, the chrome
look.
Yeah, and that's actually that's based on what you're describing. That's what I would speculate that was, Chris, rather than the tracking dots, but what Script just described. But it
don't look right. If you see the movie, it does not look like it's on her. Well, even Thor's looks the same.
I'm not crazy.
No, you're not the only. Even Thor's is just as bad. And here's the thing that pisses me off, Chris, is it would make sense if they were shooting most of this in front of the green screen, which they did shoot some of it in front of green screen. But do you realize that since they used, this is where that stage, what the hell is it called? Stagecraft technology comes in.
The volume.
Yeah, because you can actually use that to reflect on things. Like it'll actually be able to reflect. There's no excuse. They should have had a helmet for those shots. Yeah. And not only that, going off of what I was saying before, and I know you only got a few minutes, Chris, so I want to quickly get your thoughts on this, but like Taika Waititi and Tessa Thompson had this scene where they're going through, and you can tell each and every one of them were pretty much composited in there after the fact. I think he even says in that thing that they were filmed in front of a green screen, and you can tell. And he's even making fun of the fact that Korg don't look real in it. It's like, dude, this is your movie, right? And we got a story like this coming out right now. This make you look very bad in this situation. And the problem with this is this may have some of the worst special effects I've seen in any film. And it's not that the CGI itself is bad, is that nothing combines. It doesn't feel like it all fits together. And you're right. The helmet thing, and that's another thing, is like there's a bunch of that kind of stuff in the film that's added after the fact, and it just doesn't feel finished.
It didn't add a layer. Oh, sorry.
The problem with that, Tom, is that then if you're watching that movie, that takes you right out of it.
Oh, yeah.
And the succession of those just completely takes you out of the movie, and you're just really, you're watching a movie. And
I noticed that
subconsciously. You're like, this is.
I noticed that too, Chris, and I just wanted to get his final thoughts here before he had to take off on this. But yeah, and then we'll get back to the whole thing.
Well, first of all, I think it's incredibly insulting for Taika Waititi to criticize the VFX people. They could have used more money. They could have used more. I mean, it's a millionaire insulting people getting paid. I would assume a living wage. I'm not going to say they're not paid well. It's not fast food work, but I just find that incredibly insulting. And also part of it is your eye and your decisiveness. It's unbelievable to me. And I've talked to I have friends who work in VFX. I have friends who work at ILM. And a lot of it comes down to the director and their eye and what they ask for, So you'll see the same VFX team working for a different director deliver subpar effects because that's what the director wanted. That's what was approved. And then you look at other directors that are just better at dealing with it, that just are more observant. So I think it comes down to that. But it's just, I don't know, the other thing.
I think laziness is a big part of it, but go ahead. Sorry.
Well, it's definitely a part of it. But the other thing that bothers me is, and we haven't talked about this, and I haven't heard a lot of people talk about this in other streams. We talked about it on the film throughout our spoiler review, but there's sort of a weird perversion that is of Thor, Love and Thunder. Okay. There's a weird there's just things that like it kind of works in something like, say, I compared like Thor Love and Thunder and the sense of humor, right? Like I feel like the thing that bothered me most about the humor is nothing matters. Nothing matters. Whereas in the world of something like the 1966 Adam West TV Batman series, like the people in world, you know, those events were deadly serious and all the characters took the events occurring seriously. Now, it might be ridiculous. Batman pulls out shark repellent, you know, or whatever. But in world, to Batman and Bruce Wayne and everyone else, Commissioner Gordon, these events are deadly serious and they take it seriously. But when the characters in Thor Love and Thunder aren't even taking the events that are occurring in world seriously, it just doesn't. I feel like the only person who was Gore, actually, which is why I think that people have pointed out Christian Bale and Gore is probably the best character.
I agree with you.
Yeah, it's the aspect.
I actually made that point. Is that there's so much like wink, wink at the camera without there actually being wink, wink at the camera.
A lack of earnest appreciation of the material. That's the other part too. Like
yes, that's exactly
Batman
right.
60s was played earnestly. They were all in on the idea, and they did not want to convey that they knew the joke. They just wanted to play it straight. And that's how. I mean, that's also the same formula that was used in Airplane with the Zucker brothers. They played it straight. They were told specifically, act like you're not in a comedy.
Right.
Yeah. And if there's no stakes for the characters, why should we care? Yeah. If the characters have nothing at stake, why would we as the audience care?
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly it. Why would we as the audience care if the characters in the movie don't care? And all the sort of offhand lines I've heard like these, and that's why I thought it was really curious that Jeremy John's like, it's like, oh, I'm like Jeremy, like I missed all these details because they were just sort of thrown off in lines. And I think I remember events that happen, but I don't remember every specific line that's trying to thread the needle of rules in universe. Like, I'm giving the children of Asgard, they're borrowing my powers for a certain period of time. Like, it's just like, fuck. Like, I can't get over that.
Well, that creates a bunch of plot holes too, Chris, because speaking of that, let's say there's the bit where you have a character who is, for those who don't know, one of the major points of the movie, and this is not that much of a spoiler because it's like happens early on, is that the kids of Asgard get kidnapped by Gore. Right. And one of those characters, let's say, can communicate with Thor telepathically. And they use that throughout the entire fucking movie until at a point where it would be convenient to use, and then all of a sudden they can't use that power for some reason. They don't tell you why. It's just all of a sudden can't use it. Like that's this whole fucking movie, is that there's plot holes that are the size of the Grand Canyon in this movie, and they create them themselves, right? It just starts crumbling under the weight of itself in the third act. But going to the whole VFX side of it too, and to go to my whole point about it being laziness, and I think you pointed this documentary out to me, and I can't remember what it was called now, but I either stumbled across it or you pointed it out to me, and it was about VFX, especially physical effects. And I got it as a bonus disc. And so you know what I'm talking about. And I got it as a bonus disc in this other DVD collection either now. And I can't even remember the specific VFX artist who was saying this, but they were talking about how lazy directors are and how they'll just fix it in post. And they were talking about how they were just freaking out because they were doing this period piece. And in the shot was this air conditioner duct. And they're like, well, we'll take it out in post. And so he comes over, moves the lights like 30 degrees and moves the camera 30 degrees. He goes, there, now I just saved you in the studio $10,000. Shoot.
I was thinking of that earlier. They've got a very fix it in post attitude, except they don't fix it in post. So
that goes to what Chris is saying too. It's like they always worry about what you're supposed to be looking at, and they don't worry about the other shit, right? Like, so you have all these other anomalies and problems, and that's how you get cups and games of, paper cups and Game of Thrones and shit like that too.
Yeah, I know Chris has got to go in a minute, and sorry for interrupting, but there's a complete lack of logical consistency in any of these Marvel movies now. Now, I know people say, oh, it's a comic book story, it doesn't really matter what you say, you can do anything you like, but each world still has to have rules and consistency. And they've blown that away now with their, we can just say it's a multiverse, we can just say it's time travel, we can just say it's a mystery box. you still have to have physical rules in these worlds. You pointed it out correctly there, Tom. They can do something unexplained until the moment that they need to do it, and they can't. Well, that breaks all sorts of rules that should be set in place to say we can and cannot do these things with these characters. But they've blown that away, because if they get boxed into a corner, they just go, "Oh, Deus Ex Machina, bang."
Well, that's kind of like, okay, there was a tool that gives the children a power, but they don't really do a good job of explaining that. Like that's the problem. That's what Chris is getting to. Is there's a lot of throwaway lines here and there that are supposed to just kind of clear up some of these logical things, because like there's another problem is this is a bit spoilerific, so anybody who is worried about spoilers, plug your ears for like the next minute or so. But I don't know if Chris, you agree with me on this. They open this huge plot hole because one of the main issues is they establish that all these weapons are able to open the Bifrost, almost all of them that they come across, and there's not just ones that come from Asgard. So then you have that problem opened up, because that's what Gore wants, is he wants a weapon that opens the Bifrost, and he keys in on Stormbreaker. And for some reasons I can understand, but then once you open up this door that all these other things can do that, then who gives a shit? He could go anywhere and go to anybody and try and do that. But they instantly have this scene where another character just assumes they know what Gore's up to, and that just happens to be it. Right? So it's like, to me, that's just too convenient. And at the same time, it's just, there's too many open door possibilities that open up into, like I said, plot holes the size of the Grand Canyon. I don't know if you caught that too, but yeah.
Yeah, I just think that there were too many instances of, here's the rule for this, and we're going to tell you that. And you know what? I'm not going to remember all this. I'm not taking, look, I don't take notes at movies. I find it distracting. And I do know there are certain critics who do take notes at films. I'm not one of them. If I feel it and it's memorable, then the movie was successful. And if I didn't feel it and it wasn't memorable, I feel like that speaks to something. And what I'm surprised by in watching other people's coverage, other people who've reviewed the film, you know, like Midnight's Edge, everyone here, and I've watched a bunch of other reviews or discussions of Thor Love and Thunder, and they're like, there's a lot that was dense stuff there that was just casually bandied about, to the point where it's just, there's so much of it you can't remember it all. You know what I remember? Like, if you want to kill a zombie, you shoot it in the head. If you want to destroy a Death Star, you shoot torpedoes down the exhaust port. You know, just like, to me, like, if it's simple, but all this convoluted shit, just too much. And I think we're now into magic, Marvel. And I will say this, I feel like the magic is gone. The magic is gone. And I don't think that a corporation is capable of showing restraint. They merely need to show profits. And I don't know if someone, I feel like we give a lot of these executives way too much 4D chess credit. I don't think they're that smart. I think they're just, what made money, what didn't make money, why didn't it make money, make more money. You know, the
most of them, I agree with you on that. But when it comes to Chapek, I think there's been a little bit more proof with that. But no, I agree with you for the most part. I think so.
Okay, well,
I do think so.
I defer to others who are way more into it, like Kamran and whatnot. Like he really knows his stuff when it comes to that.
And he thinks that Chapek is playing 4D chess even more than I do. In fact, I'm one of the people who pushed back on him. But as far as that goes, like, I've seen enough evidence, let's say, in the last few weeks, as far as the moves he's made, and the fact that he got his extension right, you know, around the same time as the whole Lightyear debacle, tells me that at least he's got the board support.
But he's doing it right.
And he got to get rid of Rice. Sorry.
Yeah, Peter Rice. Yeah, but he's doing it. He's doing it as I would if I were going to try to clean house. I'm setting everybody up with metrics, right? My expectations are this film needs to do this amount of money, or we're going to have to, you know, shift things around. You know, you need to make sure that this film does X, or, you know, we may have to go a different direction. I mean, those are the things that he's setting up in advance. That if you're an executive, you always are setting metrics and expectations for your people, and I believe that that's how he's going to start to shake the trees, right? And I think Marvel's going to be the tree he needs to shake the soonest.
And the beauty of this part is all these things that are failing, Chris, these are all on Iger's watch. Yeah. And that was the other thing, is he came in and he hovered over him for 2 years, So he can blame a lot of this shit on Iger, and that's how I think he got rid of Peter Rice, was like, you know, between the whole, because Peter Rice was supposedly one of the people behind the big walkout and the Don't Say Gay thing. And I think that's when he got his extension, is that week he fired him. And we just didn't hear about it till last week. So, again, we have yet to see what he's going to do with a lot of that, but we also seen Elon Musk pull the same kind of shit. Speaking of, he was sharing this.
This is Chuck Norris playing Bob Chapek.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, I don't think most of them are that smart. Like, I think you're right as far as like Tom Rothman, for instance, is one of those. He just happened to luck into making Sony successful. For instance, like there's a lot of other guys out there that I would say the same thing about, but I think that Chapek is he got side blinded when he came into this thing, and I think that he's pissed, and I think that he's strategically acting out in ways that are going to make big differences for Disney going forward. Whether or not he's going to be able to stick around, we'll have yet to be seen if they're successful. But I know you're running short on time. Was there anything else you wanted to address about the VFX thing, or Thor Love and Thunder, or anything else that you want to maybe even recommend? Anything at all that's going on you want to plug or talk about before you have to leave us this morning?
Oh, no, just really appreciate the conversation. Always love to be on a Monday morning. This is my coffee. You are my coffee. It's always
we love to have you here, Chris, because we're always big. Of course, we're big fans, but we also just love your insight and your recommendations and your experience and hearing your stories and all that. It's great to have you here, and we're glad to have you on this Monday as well. So, is there anything you had coming up that you wanted to plug before you go, though?
Yeah. We'll just on a quick recommendation, and I mentioned it earlier, just as a reminder, it's opening wide this weekend. It's Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. It's an existential stop motion animated movie with the voice acting of Jenny Slate and Isabella Rossellini, and it's about a documentary filmmaker that finds a shell that is alive and makes a movie about this talking shell. It's weird. It's about our present day, like social media, but it just weaves in a lot of things. It's also just about life, love, loss, and it's probably the best animated movie this year. So I'm including like Minions and everything in there that's come out animated. It's just very original. Yeah, that's it. And it's also
kind of looks like a minion.
Yeah, it was a viral video on YouTube like more than 10 years ago. And now it's a feature film from A24. It's amazing. I've seen it twice. I'll see it again. So that's my recommendation. Is just like I just think it's the way I survive this stuff is just by having a diversified media diet. And I think it's important, if you see, every Marvel movie is going to be diminishing returns from here on. I mean, look at the slate coming up. It's pretty depressing. I don't care about most of it. And so how do you get through that? You just look for other stuff, look for, this movie or among many others. Just have a diversified media diet. I think that's how we power through. And what Culture's discovered with all the Indian movies, I mean, that's great. Like that's a whole other, they're making better Hollywood movies than Hollywood right now, which is fantastic. So just thank you for being here. That 70s. Just thank you for, just meeting you. Always fun. Script Doctor Culture. Thank you. And Tom, just appreciate being a part of it. And I do live streams of Film Threat now on Wednesday afternoons and on Fridays as well. So just subscribe to the Film Threat YouTube channel. We're trying to bump our numbers up, and because we've got some very special things upcoming that I'd like you involved in. So
anything you need, just let us know.
Yes, we have a new show that we're going to launch in the next month, and I will tell you more about it later. I'm very excited about it because it's a way for me to bring on some of my favorite YouTubers, and we'll talk about it later.
Nice.
I'll make an announcement in the next couple of weeks. But just subscribe to the Film Threat YouTube channel. Thank you so much, Rambam 3000.
We got to do this, I think. Chris recommends.
All righty,
People
take
like
care,
it.
everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Chris.
Talk to you
Cheers, Chris.
later.
Good to
Thanks
meet
again.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Yes, sir.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's grab some of these super chats. Stargate 404 sends in $20 more. Thank you so much, and says, I am religious about not watching trailers. One of the best experiences I've had with a film was in school when I had no idea what a movie was. I walk in without expectations beyond title and genre. I was deeply dissatisfied with this one. Well, that's one way of going about it, and yeah, that's one of the reasons why I don't tend to usually go watch stuff without at least a teaser trailer, in the very least. But yeah.
Yeah, I get it though. I mean, I'd love to go in with no expectations. The problem is it's always foisted upon me. I always have all of this information. Yeah, so it's like, oh.
I'm trying to think of the last time I saw a movie without a trailer. It's been a while, unless you're talking about some B movie that I bought on Blu-ray.
I saw RRR without a trailer.
There you go.
Strictly off of Chris and like a rough outline of what it was. And it brought me into a whole new cinema world. And I'm
same for me, culture. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like the trailer I saw didn't even represent the film. Sorry, you were saying 70.
Yeah.
No, I just say it brought me into all these Indian movies that I'm working my way through now. This fantastic Telugu and Hindi and other Indian movie studios I was unaware of. So there's a lot of good stuff to check out there for sure.
And then Dash Attack has been a member for 4 months at the Edgelord level and says Shadow the Hedgehog will make sympathetic anti-hero villains great again in Sonic 3. Jeff Fowler worked on the Shadow spin-off game. Will be awesome. Well, there you go. Got that to look forward to if you're looking for a good villain, it sounds like. And then Gabriel Quiroga, sorry about that. Blah, 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 if I could talk this morning, says, Hail Midnight's Edge. Thor Love and Thunder was unmitigated trash. Gore and Lady Thor storyline ruined. Thor from Endgame had great moment when he says, what else can I lose? Now he is a joke. Taika is Paul Feig of Marvel. I have a hard time disagreeing with you there. As much as I love Ragnarok, this was a very bad move on their part. I don't know what they were thinking. But yeah. STR Red Wolf says, how about Taika Waititi as director of the next Howard the Duck movie? He's waiting for a script. Give him one that's quackers. You know, honestly, STR Red Wolf, this probably would have been a better move for him. But at the same time, I don't know if he did part of the writing or whatever. I'm sure he did because he usually writes on almost everything he works on. But he clearly doesn't get the Guardians of the Galaxy. So I'm not even sure he can understand Howard the Duck's humor. If anything, I'd say give James Gunn a Howard the Duck movie.
Oh yeah, I mean that's his baby. I think he's the only one that could probably get that thing past the finish line.
Well, I'm just glad we didn't have to sit through the Kevin Smith Howard the Duck.
Oh God, that got canceled. No, thank you. No, thank you.
But instead we got Masters of the Universe, sadly. The Kaiju Gamer says Gore's comic threat level makes Thanos look like a child in comparison. Yeah, this is kind of what I've heard. Why not go with Thor having his son Magni for a sequel or use Thunderstrike? Yeah, that's another complaint from a lot of fans is that they hopped over a lot of great storylines to get to this one.
And they combined two different Jason Aaron runs. So
the God Killer and the
if you want more
Thor
info on that,
Lady Thor.
If you want more on that, go talk to 32 Flavors of Nick Weiser because he will talk your ear off about that. So
yeah, and I know a lot of people were pissed that Beta Ray Bill wasn't involved in the fight because he was supposed to be as well. And no, I totally get that, and that's where I was like, oh, that's kind of depressing when I hear more about what Gore was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So Thomas Plummer says, I don't know about anything else, but I'm suffering from superhero movie fatigue. I'm suffering from I'm suffering from lack of every other genre fatigue.
Yeah.
Well, there's other stuff out there. You just have to find it now, and you're going to get there's a dearth of shit coming out now. So
just go look at Film Threat. They talk about a lot of movies you never hear about. They're a great source to start with, and then on top of that, go to the simple Google route. Just Google movies that came out in insert year. You will get a massive list, and a lot of them you've probably never heard of that might pique your interest. So check.
What's going to be funny is the last half of this summer, outside of Spider-Man getting the re-release, is going to look a lot like it used to be back in the day when we didn't get sequels every 10 minutes. Because all the stuff coming out between now and October is original material because there's no big tentpole films coming out unless they slip in Expendables 4 or something like that, something else like that in there.
Bullet Train, right? You Bullet Train.
Bullet Train. There's that Lion movie. There's the Nope movie. There's a couple other original movies.
Peele guy, right? Yeah.
Which one?
The Nope is Peele.
Yeah, that's his new movie, and I can't remember the name of the Lion movie, but there's a couple other original films that are coming out. So there is some original stuff coming out between now and the end of the summer.
And some South Korean stuff you should watch.
It'll just be interesting to see, how much of it gets is actually good.
Says, and Script Doctor said, go look for Indian movies. I watch a lot of Korean stuff, a lot of Japanese stuff. There's a ton of great material out there. A lot of it on streaming, which because it hasn't had releases here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thank you for that, 70s. No, you're 100% right. Streaming is where it's at, especially with Amazon and Netflix. But I have a question. Is the Wick film coming out? Did they not?
I don't think that comes out till November or December. If not, it might not come out till the beginning of next year. Now I'd have to look. Can't remember. But yeah, Clerks 3 but that's coming out in such a limited capacity that you could barely call it a fucking release at this point. And what's hilarious, and this is some Schadenfreude on my part, is the last I looked, the trailer hadn't even hit 500,000 views yet. Mm-hmm. That shows that there's little to no interest for this movie, sadly for him. But there you go. And I think that's why he's starting shit on again with that 3-year-old fucking Scorsese's quote. Right? Did you see that shit? I got a little bit of a attention on my Twitter because of that. I rewrote the headline.
You made some friends again?
Of course. Thomas Plummer comes in and says, I don't know about anything else. Oh, we got this one. Sorry. But thank you again, Thomas. And then we got Casperius here who says, some people like burnt pizza. This is true. In some sort of multiverse of madness. So Watiki Torches flame has burnt out. Awesome. I don't know. This is the thing. I think he's reached. Somebody compared him to Ryan Johnson, I think. And I think at first I didn't get. Yeah, it was a U Culture. At first I didn't get the comparison, but now thinking about it, I get what you're saying. He's better off staying the fuck away from this kind of shit. In fact, I hope that I think he's trolling with the Star Wars thing. Here's the thing, because I've been joking that his Star Wars movie is the new Schrodinger's cat. I think it's actually happening. All this stuff. He's just full of shit when he says he hasn't seen the script. So like that doesn't make sense because he's one of the writers. That's him probably trolling again. Script's right. You cannot take anything he says seriously. You have to basically think the opposite of whatever the fuck he's saying is probably true.
Well, here's the other part too. I liken this to he's kind of the worst parts of Joss Whedon and James Gunn put together when it comes to Marvel for what he does online, and I guess what he did with Thor, Love and Thunder. So I mean, because again, James Gunn wowed people with Guardians of the Galaxy, but also with the soundtrack and the music choices. And then what do we get? We get Thor Ragnarok with, one of the most popular songs that has been rarely used in film ever. And now we're doing it again with Thor Love and Thunder, at least on the trailers and the advertisements. And what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of Guns N' Roses on there.
Oh, it's mostly Guns N' Roses outside of one Dio song and like a couple other songs.
So it's trying to lean into that aspect of someone else's taste and someone else's approach, which I think is disingenuous. It also shows that he probably doesn't really care at this point anymore. Because what he did with Thor, I thought was inventive and bang on. And he was one of the few that actually just came in and did a sizzle reel pitch, which Marvel refuses to accept. But for some reason, someone low enough in the office saw it and touted it enough to get from tier to tier to tier all the way up to the top, so that he managed to get the bid for doing Thor. And now I guess with his second installment, I wonder. I think Disney's probably satisfied with it. I mean, ideally they probably want to cross that $1 billion mark, but I think they'll talk themselves into being satisfied with whatever.
I'm not so sure. Results. I'm not so sure anymore, Script, with the headlines we're getting. I think they're running some interference out there. But I mean, you could be right, but at the same time, I think Chapek's kind of laughing in his own little way at how bad some of this shit's turning out.
I'm not talking about Chapek. I'm talking about just Disney in general. They're going to convince themselves that they're satisfied
they're
with that.
They're spinning the fuck out of this. That's kind of the whole point of the title this morning. And that's what I'm saying, is they're trying to paint this as any kind of possible win as they can. And that's what Culture was saying, is like, yeah, they're trying to compare it to the other Thor movies instead of comparing it to the other Marvel movies, right? And they're even trying to say, oh, that's the third highest opening film of the year, COVID or whatever. It's like, that's not saying a whole lot, especially when you've had movies like Top Gun and Spider-Man No Way Home, right? That show you that people will go to the theater if it's something they want to see. And the fact that this opened 20 million less, That's not good. Then Doctor Strange, that is.
It'll go if the audience knows they're going to be treated with respect and see
Yeah.
something that's had some care, attention, and stewardship was the word earlier. Yeah.
That's the word of the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if Taika Waititi's torch has burnt out. I think he should just stick to his stuff, because I like anything I've seen of his. Otherwise, this is the first thing of his I saw that I did not like.
Yeah,
I've not seen everything of his. Keep that in mind. But
have you seen Jojo Rabbit?
No, but I have it. I just haven't had a chance to check it out.
Yeah, check it out. You'll have, again, it's the same. It's like the Rian Johnson effect, right? Rian Johnson. I mean, his original stuff is him, so his everything's reflected there. That's one of the problems, I think. Coming to Marvel, he had an interesting take, and then he bankrupted all creativity when it comes to the property again, because it's not his. So, but I think we're losing that 70s rock fan.
Yeah, 70s rock fans checking out. So check out his channel.
Yeah. Thanks very much for having me on, Tom. And
no problem.
An honor. I think this is the first Midnight's Edge in the morning.
Yes, it is. But you also hop in on Mead from time to time, and I hop on your channel when I can, anyway.
Yes, and thank you.
Even though our schedule's not always the best, but yeah.
Well, I appreciate every time you do join, sir, and it's great to be on with you guys. It's I feel very humbled to be among such fantastic YouTubers as Culture and Script Doctor and Chris. So thanks, guys, for having me.
Thank you for being here.
I do have to drop out now because my own show is at 2 p.m. Pacific today. So please, everybody, if you get the chance to swing by, whilst it is entitled It's Only Rock and Roll, my regular show, Only Talk and Roll, I'm actually doing a movie today. We're doing Outland, the Sean Connery 1981 science fiction movie. So we're going to have a lot of fun chatting about that. So yeah, swing by and give us a try. And thanks to the chat, and thank you to you all.
Thank you. Later. Appreciate you, man.
Bye.
All right, we got a few more super chats to go here. We got Callum Lyle, who says, turns out artists and effects hate working on Phase 4. Yeah, I think it has more to do with the hours and the expectations than the actual films. But yes, I get what you're saying.
I think script is right there, though. I think it's the VFX management, right? Because each of these entities are trying to establish their reputation in the industry, and I think that comes to foil them. Ultimately, at least that's my opinion, and I think their
only answer to it, though, is to unionize. I mean, really, and that's why I'm glad I had Script here today, because I wanted to ask him that. Yeah. Specifically, because I didn't think they did have a guild or a union yet. So
if they had here's the thing with unions, is they have to be very, very well organized to the point where the union dues aren't going to the union reps and only the union reps, and it's supposed to go into a coffer to be drawn upon for lawyers for negotiation. It shouldn't be a separate company essentially representing you. That's my issue with unions, because it kind of becomes antithetical to the concept of collective bargaining. But yes, I do think that the VFX artists should unite together and basically have a voice with regards to the contracts they're getting, so that they can actually be achievable and not at the expense of the employees. Like, you should not hear stories of them saying, like, yeah, I only got 3 hours sleep because I had to get up and meet this deadline that every single person in this industry knows is impossible to achieve, but they made a contract and I'm beholden to it because I was not part of that negotiating process. The other part too is, one of the reasons that JPEG and Disney should be focusing on Marvel is because Marvel has a very strong infrastructure for a studio, like one of the strongest, and Disney doesn't have much of anything. Never has, never would. Might will one day, but if they can fix that structure, and if they can fix the direction of what's going on and how they're proceeding with newer titles, newer ventures, they can then copy and paste that onto all the other studios that they own that are struggling, and hopefully get it into a better, secure, not necessarily automated, but more reliable stability than what they currently have. And for the VFX side of things, once they get that stability, then they actually have a solid direction. So they know, okay, we're not going to have alternate shots. We're not going to have 5 or 6, alternatives to this one idea. We know exactly what the idea we want. We want them to focus on it. We want them to make it the best we can, and we want that done in this time frame. And if it can be laid out like that, I'm pretty sure that will reduce a great deal of stress within the VFX community that has to achieve that goal, because they know that they're not going to, like, it's easier to touch up something that's in the right direction than to throw it out and then start from scratch again. And it looks like with some of the Reddit posts there, that's kind of the situations they've been put in, where they've spent weeks on something and it's just discarded so that they can go for something else that someone else has spent weeks on or what have you. So you've split two resources onto the same scene with two different outcomes for what? Just options? It just, that seems very reckless in regards to not just spending.
And it makes no sense. Yeah. Because these are basically now, and here's the thing is, and I made this point before, but I still stand by it. Most of these movies are ostensibly just big animated films, right? And anybody who's ever known how an animated film is made, they don't animate a bunch of shit and edit it out later. They actually have to sit down and pre-direct the film, basically figure out everything that's going to be in it, get rid of what's not going to be in it ahead of time, because animation takes a lot of time and a lot of people and a lot of effort, and you can't just reshoot it, right? No. To reshoot a scene in animation takes a lot. So it's kind of the same thing here. And I think that this is where I was getting to the lazy part. And I think this is where the artists actually have a gripe, is that there's a breakdown in communication either between the people who do the bidding for these jobs and the studios, and or those who are just getting overzealous with having the idea of their name attached to a Marvel movie, their studio attached to a Marvel movie, their VFX company, at the detriment of their actual artists. Because that's the thing is, I agree with you, Script. They shouldn't even get the 5 fucking choices. It should be like you just said. It should be, this is what we want, this is what we get, and then you don't have 20 different things, because that's the way it is in animation. And take it back to the way it was when you had physical effects. Like if you brought in a model and or whatever, you do the tweaking in the maquette stage, right? You don't do that when you're already building the fucker. Like, unless you're Steven Spielberg, you can't get away with that shit.
Well, they're making more advanced previs, which is really, really fantastic. But the problem is that in some cases, and I would not be surprised if somebody would be able to point this out with regards to Thor Love and Thunder, because you're talking about the helmet part, but the previs should not look like the final product at all. It should actually just be like, this is the general idea, the direction we're going. This is a motion capture suit. Here are the register points so that we see how the character is moving. This is the angle we're looking at. And then before you actually get into the details and rendering part, that's when the director comes in and says, okay, well, I want the angle moved a little bit over to this direction. I want this action to be a bit more concise. I want this to be more fluid. Throw in all the details. There should be pages and pages of notes and specific requests for those animators and those VFX supervisors and executors to check off and make sure they can achieve before they even get to the rendering part. So those things have to come in stages, and if that's not being done, and if they're saying no, I want these very ambiguous generalities of he stabs this guy. Well, from what angle does he stab him? How does he stab him? Where does the sword go in? Like, is it a sword? Is it a knife? Is it a branch? Is it stake? What is it? Like, all those details have to be laid out in every single instance, because once it's done, it's average between 40 to 100 hours of rendering even a partial composite. And
depending on what you're doing, but
layer it again and again and again, because there's someone that just works on the lighting of, say, a glove, like a CGI glove that's going to be on a character's hand, and then that has to be in sync with the model that it's going on to, and then that model has to be in sync with the background, and that background has multiple layers of believability, which is why when I said this on Twitter over a week ago, when you're dealing with something like volume and stagecraft, one of the hardest things for VFX artists to do is match lighting, because light works in reality much different than how a computer responds to it.
Perceives
closer and closer all the time, but it's not 100%. So the thing that you want to do is, it would be better to build basically a macroture of a set, film it, and as you would shoot in the 1970s and 80s, shoot
like a bigature
coming into the Death Star docking bay, and then recording the detailed movements of that camera. You set it up for the actors as well, so that they're doing the scene and the camera is moving exactly as it did on the macroture, so that the backgrounds are in sync. And now you can match the lighting, because it's a lot easier for a cinematographer to match real lighting than it is to try have a CGI artist match real lighting.
You just up convert it, basically, is all you do.
It's not even an up convert. It's you shoot on 70 millimeter and you just project it on the volume, and then you have it in camera sync.
That's true.
You actually it was even simpler than that, Script. You actually just record camera movements and positions, and then with your actors, and then you replicate it later on the empty set.
And I think that's part of the problem at the same time, because it used to be, like we just said, you had to pre-plan this down to a lot of these VFX shots down to the, like, not just a frame, but multiple things within one frame, right? Like an example, and this is a totally different level, but like, okay, when you're doing an animated film, they plan on what the model's going to look like, each and every angle of it, all that kind of stuff. And then when you're doing the breaking down of the scene, not only do you have to handle whatever the character's doing as far as the movement and the backgrounds and all these other things, multiple characters on top of multiple layers, like, and I'm just talking about standard animation here. Like, they'll sit down and they have to break out on a time frame sheet. Like, they'll break down like per frame and second and all that kind of shit. Like, exactly where what vowel and what sound goes into what, you know, to make where the mouth movement goes. So they're very meticulous about this shit. But see, now the CGI, what that's done is open the door and allowed it to be a little bit more free, right? But unfortunately, what that's done is also made them lackadaisy and just like, well, we'll just shoot whatever. And then it's up to the VFX artist to kind of fill in that gap. And I can see where this is being a problem. And it's too much work on the one other side that it can be probably, it could be handled better on the film side of things. In that respect, I can see their argument too, as far as that goes. And it's just becoming too much of a crutch. And I keep using that term, but I think it's accurate.
It's becoming a crutch when really it should be a tool that the most creative teams should be exploiting and getting the most out of, to the point where it's like, holy crap, I can't believe you pulled that off with the stagecraft technology, as opposed to the stagecraft technology being used currently now as kind of a Band-Aid.
It is. and not only that, it's like, okay, when the fix it and post thing gets used too often, like, you should only be allowed, like, here's the thing, and I'm just talking out my ass here, and this is just, you know, whatever, but like, you should almost have a rule on a set. It's like, you only get 2 of those. You only get 2 of those. We're going to fix it in post. And those you save for those moments where the shot's just not working right. Like, something, no matter what you've done, you've calculated it all, something's not working right. That's the time you get to use we'll fix it in post. Because otherwise you're getting to this part where everything is, we'll fix it in post. And I can see where the workload is being dumped onto people. That's what I'm saying, is these are becoming basically animated films now. Between all the CGI they have to do. And like, we heard the one part where they dumped a whole sequence on them at the last minute for Thor. Like, could you imagine if they did that to somebody in ILM, say back in the 1980s before CGI was a thing? They'd be like, go fuck yourself. We're not gonna be able to do that. Not make it look real.
If you want it done, it's going to cost you not just time, but a lot of money.
A lot of money. Yeah, and that's the thing, is you go in these things and they'll say this, you know, when they do the awards, or even sometimes at the end of the movie, when they list all the animators and stuff, sometimes they'll even say how many hours were put into that. And it's like crazy amount of hours. You're going from like hundreds of hours to thousands of hours of animators working on these movies, right? And that's almost like years worth of work going into one movie. And it's just insane. So somewhere something's got to give or break at some point. And that's where, like, again, like a guild or a union, like, again, I'm not a big fan of unions or whatnot, whatever, but they need somebody to come in and give some kind of regulations. And like you said, negotiate for them. And the thing is they have a lot of power, because let's be real. If VFX artists decide tomorrow to come together and decide they're going to go on strike, can you imagine how fast? And I mean, like we were talking about with writers' strikes and other strikes in the past, like we even had that one that's kind of seemed to just kind of disappear with the
well, the pandemic kind of screwed around with that one.
yeah. But I'm sure you're kind of keeping on top of it still because it affects you. But like, this is a situation where VFX artists decide to say fuck it and walk off tomorrow and have a strike. The entire industry would just completely fall apart. Like, they wouldn't know what to fucking do, because nothing would get done. Projects would be pushed back by weeks, if not months, just because of a few days or weeks of strikes would completely cripple the industry.
It not just movies, but television. Majority of them, because
but that's just
there's so many special effects houses that even if 60% of them decide to strike, those other 40% will take on the work within a heartbeat.
Unfortunately, that's the problem.
Overstressed.
And they'll just farm out more work to like Korea and all that shit. That's the problem. So I know it's a
tricky state.
Yeah. But if they were all to get up everybody, and I mean everybody, and that's just it could be one of the few times where they could just say, you know what, we're going to do this. And I think the industry would have to listen, because it's getting to that point. But again, this boils more down, I think, to the communication between the companies and the houses doing the effects. Sounds like to us.
It also is a big problem with regards to the planning process. I mean, the best films that make it to theaters that really resonate with audiences usually are well planned and thought out of beforehand, because there's something specific with with the story they're trying to tell. They have those details. You're not really going to get the greatest of quality in something that's slapped together kind of last minute. Or even on the improvising side of things, even after they've shot something like a Waiting for Guffman or this is Spinal Tap, it's like, well, okay, we have all this stuff. How do we make all of this the best it can be out of that? And if we have to reshoot something, we'll go and reshoot it. You have to have that type of knowledge, commitment, and a little bit of foresight with your production, because every day is obscenely expensive. You have to budget down to the second. And if that even goes not just on your shooting schedule, but it also goes to your post. How many times do you have the editing suite for? How many hours are you working or how many people are working on what scenes? How many hours do we have allotted for that? What is the end goal? How many times do we go into to watch and review, run the dailies, run the composites? All that stuff has to be calculated and planned out beforehand. And guess what? It's probably going to be 2 or 3 times what you budget anyways. As a result of that, so you better make sure that you're getting all your ducks in a row before you get to those more expensive stages in your post-production. And if what we're getting out of that Reddit thread and what some people are saying on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and whatnot on the VFX side of things, it feels like that type of planning is not given the due diligence it's due.
I agree. And then 4204 sends in $5. Thank you so much. And this is a very true statement. Inflation is hiding downward trend in box office. Actually, tickets sold are down. Yeah, you're technically right for the most part. Like basically the only films that we can really say were genuine hits so far in the last year have pretty much been Spider-Man and Top Gun. Those are the only two that I can say are genuine hits that people went back to the theater to see multiple times and got people to the theater that don't normally go. Yeah. Outside of that, yes, you're right. Everything is down, and I'm sure Culture will agree with you on this, that the inflation is definitely hiding the difference.
Oh, it is substantially. Yeah. And VR actually, Valiant Renegade has been talking about this in his own way as well. So yes, the number of butts in seats, and in fact, 6, I think earlier in the chat said the same thing. I wish people would count butts in seats, because that's the difference. Fewer people, and again, you're also, inflation is going to hit the studios and has hit the studios as well. And a recession is hitting the studios right now. Just that's the plain, that's a plain way of saying it.
Yeah. And Camo Bot Killer says Disney and Marvel movies. I'm done. Love your shows. Well, thank you, Camo Bot Killer.
I think a lot of us are done.
But yeah, I think that's kind of what the box office is reflecting this Monday morning.
Yeah.
Ram Bam 3000 says Zeus Cupbearer in the myths is a youth called Ganymede. Ganymede, Trojan considered the most beautiful of mortals. Yes. Mm-hmm. And then Revcore says, considering how many LPs or IPs, I think he means, sorry, have been ruined by the holders, I trust fans more. I agree with you, Revcore.
Well, it's like, what, 5 IPs? 6 by September?
Yeah, more than that probably. But like,
they're not big enough to have been ruined.
Well, and by the way, the Rippaverse is over $600,000.
Sweet.
Oh,
speaking of new IPs.
I mean, yeah, well, I mean, true. I mean, to Scripps' point, the definition of ruined is...
Well, the thing is, like, there are lots and lots of IPs out there, and how many is not a real number. Like, we can go, Star Trek, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings to a degree, Game of Thrones, Marvel is getting poorly done, the DC stuff has been in flux. So, I mean, that's, 5, 6? That's actually kind of really small compared to all the other
Doctor
IPs
Who?
that are out there. Doctor Who, there we go. Yep.
TMNT.
There's
a lot of the 80s. There's a lot of the 80s cartoon franchises that have gotten really shitty reboots. But I get what you're saying as far as the level wise, and again, I also, to my point, I was saying is the definition of ruin, because almost every one of these that we mentioned, they're not beyond repair. Right, that's the thing.
And the stuff that came before those ruins is still good. Like, that's the thing. Like, you can't undo quality from the past.
And that's why those IPs will never die, right? Because that's my point, is that as of the worst of them, the one that has sustained the most damage, let's say, I would say is Star Wars. Right, of all the ones that you can calculate and that has the less of a chance of recovery, is probably Star Wars, and that's mainly just because there is only one Star Wars timeline. Right. Star Trek has been able to finagle its way with different timelines, and Doctor Who is built on that idea and certain other things. You know, even Transformers and some other franchises we've talked about, they've been rebooted so many times. TMNT, when I mentioned, also has been rebooted so many times.
It's been rebooted as many times in the late 90s as it has now, hasn't it? Essentially,
pretty close. Like, it's been rebooted. It gets rebooted on an average. It depends on how you count the reboots in quotations. Like, the longest running version of TMNT was the original 80s cartoon at this point.
Yeah, because the 2003 series only lasted, 4 seasons?
Something like that. And actually, to me, I love that series for the first part of it, but then once it starts to get into that's the thing. And I'm not going to get into my whole thing with the comics, but yeah, once they get away from the standard stories and into the cosmic and weird shit, that's when I fall out anyway. So, like, yeah, and I know that's kind of funny saying that about a title called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but yeah, I prefer the earlier grounded comic stories than I do when they get into the dimension stuff and the and all the aliens and stuff. But like, no, like, again, all these franchises, all of them, even Star Wars, are not beyond repair. It's going to take some time to find the right person to come in and make something of them.
Yeah.
So, but again, like I said, of all of them that I think is probably in the worst status right now is probably between Star Wars and Star Trek. Star Trek, because it's just been sullied so much that they'll never probably reach the heights that Star Trek ever reached before. And Star Wars is just a long way off, just because it's probably going to have to face some kind of reboot at some point for it to get fixed. But I even hate saying that.
It's true, though.
But Marvel, you can reboot tomorrow. That's the beauty of, like, Marvel, DC, some of these other franchises that, you know, they're kind of like Robin Hood and Tarzan. You can get a million different versions of them. It doesn't matter. And sooner or later, some of these properties are going to go into the public domain. So we're only a couple of years from, like, Batman and some of these other characters becoming public domain. So,
unless, the law changes again. But yes,
we'll see.
It ain't gonna. There are so many people.
James Bond in Canada is technically public domain.
Technically, yes. But yeah, so that's a great conversation to be had, Revcore, and one we don't have enough time for today, unfortunately. Mecha J says Thor Love and Thunder is an example of letting a director have too much reign to do what they want on an IP. I agree. For everything,
gotta get back to symbiotic filmmaking, where the creative has to be nurtured, supported by the business, but the business side has to be able to say, "Hey, we still got to make money off of this."
What was it that I said the other day? They need a coach and a cheerleader at the same time.
Yes.
Yep.
And they don't have a lot of coaches right now. They have too many cheerleaders.
Well, they got rid of the coaches. That's the other problem, is the leadership. I mean, and again, when you're talking specifically about Disney, that's all Iger's fault. Iger brought in a whole committee of executives that have different things on their mind than making quality product, and they weren't even close to the concept of making quality product prior to getting their jobs there. So you can make arguments for Feige and a few others, but Victoria Alonso came in with an agenda for a reason, and that was it. And many others are there for that reason. Anyway, I'm sorry.
And hopefully her Deja number, but we'll see. And I want to thank Carrie's for the member chat. I made Carrie's hungry. Sorry for the pizza analogy. That happens. DS Ford says, any thoughts on the new Netflix movie, The Gray Man? I'm not aware of this one. Is anybody here on the panel aware of this one? This is a new one.
Nope. Haven't seen it.
All right. Yeah. No, I don't keep up with a lot of the Netflix movies unless they kind of come across my radar. But with your asking about it, I will try to check out a trailer for it. DS Ford. And if I do, I will let you know my thoughts on it. And then Shadow Racer the Red Mage says, if both Marvel and DC are multiversing, then why then they should handshake and do an Avenger Justice League Association crossover, but neither side is smart enough to realize they are synergistic properties. Do you mean like DC and Marvel?
And Marvel, yeah, they're saying like kind of like what they did with Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
That'll never happen.
Yeah,
never happen.
You know, the powers that be at Warner Brothers, even though they've just recently been replaced by Zaslav. Zaslav won't.
Yeah,
the commingle.
It's one thing to do it in comics and other things. It's another to do it in actuality. Like, let me put it to you this way: we were fucking beyond lucky that we got the animated version of TMNT versus Batman or meets Batman or whatever it was.
Yeah,
that was like, wow! I couldn't believe that, because that only just happened because the comics deals are so much easier to make than movie deals. I couldn't believe that Paramount played ball with Warner Brothers to let them use TMNT. That was craziness. But hey, those things happening are a rarity, and that's why we should enjoy things like Spider-Man No Way Home and stuff like that when they do happen, because they're not going to happen that often. And that's one of the only reasons I'm looking forward to like the Michael Keaton situation. But I don't want to let that cloud my judgment either. So
they're not going to happen because on the DC side of things, they really don't have a locked permanent cast with regards to their characters. So that's all up in the air. So you got a long time going before you have those two studios working in partnership for a crossover.
Roger Rabbit was such a rarity. What was the more recent one I saw something? Oh, and I think it was Rescue Rangers. I think they managed to get one or two of the WB characters, but that was like, I'm like, holy crap, I can't even believe they got that. And that means somebody probably knew somebody and they were only able to get a couple of things. Like when it came to Roger Rabbit, that was one of those once in a lifetime things because you had a certain set of events that kind of happened. Disney was on this point of, in the verge of not being Disney anymore, for one. Mm-hmm. And Warner Brothers wanted to be and continue to be in the Steven Spielberg business. So that all was predicated on the fact that Steven Spielberg said, I want this, and both studios played nice. And by playing nice, they basically had a set of rules that they all had to agree by. And that's why when you watch the movie, both Disney and Warner Brothers characters generally share the scene, and they're only in the scene at the same amount of time. That means Mickey couldn't have a little bit more screen time than Bugs. Nope.
And that's why both of those characters were blips at the end. Yep. Blips.
And all those characters, like they had to have an exact set amount, like they negotiated that down to the letter. And that will never happen again. That's why Roger Rabbit 2 has been a pain in the ass to get off the ground. Ready Player One is another example of that tearing the black. But then again, that has all to do with the power of Spielberg. And honestly, that might be one of the last times that he was able to really pull those kind of strings, right? Because at this point, I don't even know if his name is worth as much as it used to be in Hollywood. But those rarities that happen, I don't foresee a Marvel and DC crossover anytime soon. Like those two studios have no reason to play ball with each other right now, not in that respect. And we see how much trouble Sony and Disney have working together just with Spider-Man. Can you imagine the clusterfuck it would be to have Warner and Disney try to work together on some kind of crossover movie?
Now, oh my God. Especially if Spider-Man's involved, because then you got Sony in there.
Yeah, then you got Sony involved too.
So here's how this gets fixed, by the way. If you end up with a Comcast doing the same thing with NBC Universal and spitting them out in a reverse Morris trust, which, believe it or not, this has been discussed, to combine with EA, Electronic Arts, into a new entity, that might work. Because that at that point you would have access to a completely different catalog of characters. But I don't know that how many of those types of things would happen. I mean, under the Warner, because of the way Warner got spun out, I don't see how they could do it. I just don't. And I came in the middle of the conversation, so I probably just confused everybody.
No, you're fine. And this is one of the few rarities where one of the few random Warner Brothers characters has a scene where the other doesn't have a counterpart. There's a few of them. But basically, you can kind of consider the Tweety Bird as a counterpart to like the Dumbo scene in the beginning. Yeah. Right? Like they had to have an equal amount of characters with the equal amount of screen time. And specifically the main characters like Daffy and Bugs and those all had to have the same amount of screen time as their counterpart. So like that was kind of the rule. But yeah, it was an interesting time that will never probably happen again. And like I said, with Ready Player One, you'll also notice that a lot of the properties that, and this not all of them, but most of the properties that are involved are because, well, Spielberg had a deal with Paramount and Universal at that time through DreamWorks and Amblin. Same thing with Warner Brothers. He still, I think, does have a deal with over there, but I don't know how much he actually, he made a couple movies here recently from there, didn't he? Was it not Lincoln, but there's another one he did, I think was for Warner. So he still makes movies for there once in a while. So he was able to pull all that together. Of course, it was a Warner Brothers picture, I think. But, and the Disney, I don't think there was much Disney or anything Disney in Ready Player One, was there? I'm trying to remember. I don't think there was.
I don't think so. I don't remember.
So there you go on that part. And a lot of the stuff that he was involved in would be stuff that he had kind of a tangential attachment to anyway, for the most part.
And I wasn't excited by that film anyway. So it's
not really. I mean, it was kind of cool to see certain characters, but like for instance, and this is what I mean by tangential connections, Chucky. He actually has a connection with Chucky that you wouldn't realize, but he's the reason that Chucky is over at Universal, because the guy that owned Chucky, or one of the producers that had a part of Chucky, was one of the producers on An American Tail. So that's how he knew him. And he told Universal, give him a shot. And then he told them to give Universal a shot and work that whole deal out. And it ended up working out for everybody in the end. And it was all kind of that kind of a thing. So a lot of the properties that are in that movie, that's what I mean. Like, that's why Chucky's in there. I guarantee you that. Olaf Van Ness says, Disney is a factory with a mass-produced item with no quality control. Yes. It's buy, watch, product, consume, don't ask, judge, get next product, repeat cycle. And this is what I was trying to say earlier to Chris about, and going into where a lot of the stuff that we're still seeing is of the Iger regime. Yeah. And this is where Chapek, one of the first things he tried to do and why he got so much resistance, and I wish I maybe would have thought of saying this then, but I am now, and that is because he changed how the hierarchy works at Disney, right, Culture?
Yeah. Yeah, Chapek's recent moves has changed who reports.
Well, this was before that. This was way before that. Like, this is why he got his first recent. I'm not talking about recently. I'm talking about before. This is the reason he got pushed back to begin with. Remember, because he made the studio, the sub studios or whatever you want to call them, like Marvel, Lucasfilm, Pixar, all them have to answer to distribution and merchandising.
Right, merchandising. Yeah, he moved him over to products. Yeah.
So that's why they had to answer for why these things weren't making money.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, his goal is now, especially after the recent moves, is to kind of create a reporting structure that means that you're answering to different people that maybe you don't want to. And I think a lot of the studio heads, like Victoria Alonso, didn't like that either. And so she was very vocal, which leads me to believe that the reason she's writing her memoir, she's gone her way out the door, which I think we've all talked about before. But anyway, sorry.
No, you're fine. I knew you probably knew a little bit more about it than I did. But anyway, yes, no Andre today. He is away. He was going to try and hop in if he was able to get a connection, but he must not have been able to, or was a little predisposed, or whatever you want to call it. So no Andre today, but I'm sure he will try on Wednesday. But we do have a video that should be dropping hopefully within the next 24 hours, I believe, if not already today. And but he will be back, if not this week, next week for sure. So yeah, I'm driving, and my God, we've been all over the road, but we're almost to our destination. Monkey Jeebus has been a member for 6 months at the Midnighter level. Thank you for that, Monkey Jeebus. Then Buttcrack Media says Thor Love and Blunder was hot garbage. Well, there you go. That seems to be the consensus for most people, but some people do enjoy it, so we have to acknowledge that as well. Callum Lyle says, do you think the rumors about Tessa Thompson and Waititi could be true? I'm not sure which rumors are these. Are that they're a couple or something? Is that
it's a thruple. It's a thruple.
Oh, who gives a shit? Yeah, I'm kind of in the script.
Important. Let them do what they want in their private lives. Don't let that be public to other people.
The only time it bothers me is like with Rob Zombie, like he has to insert his wife into everything. It's like, no, you insert yourself into your wife, leave her out of the movies.
Ooh, yeah. Well, Tim Burton does the same thing. He does the same thing with Tim Burton.
He's not married to her anymore, and she hasn't been in any of his movies for the last few years.
Really?
Yeah. But at least she was a decent actress before they got married.
All right.
Tell me one thing that What's Her Face has been in that was any good that she was good in.
I don't even remember her name.
Exactly, Sherry Zombie, Sherry Moon Zombie, or whatever.
No, Ellen Beckham Carter.
No, I know, but you're talking
Helena?
about
Helena.
No, she's doing her own thing.
Yeah.
A sixth thought, I should have used the drums, shouldn't I? But Helena Bonham Carter was already pretty well established. Well before, and I guess I don't think they ever were married. You're right. Second rodeo.
They're just together. Yeah,
but they're not together anymore either, though. They broke up between Alice movies. That's why I think one of the main reasons he didn't direct the sequel.
Man,
because he's dating somebody else now, like some, I can't remember if it's a French actress or model or some shit like that, but yeah. Yeah, Rob Zombie's a musician with a camera, not a director. Well, he's made some decent stuff, but nothing I would consider as much to the point where he gets as much praise as he does, or
he does
attention that he does.
He's probably overpraised. I mean,
Devil's Rejects is his best movie, and that's about it. That's about the best of it. I mean, outside of that, I can't really recommend any of his movies to anybody. And you have to kind of see the other movies to get Devil's Rejects, so whatever. And yeah, this is my problem with the Munsters, is he's got his wife playing Lily Munster. That's where I have a problem with it. If it's his own movies, fine, no big deal. But like,
I don't like some of the visuals we've seen already from that, but we'll see. I'm gonna wait.
Yeah, I'm kind of not as on board as some people are with that. But yeah, Callum, this is the first I've heard about it outside of I do know they had like that whole throuple business out there, but I'm with Script. I don't care.
Yeah,
I really don't care.
I don't care either.
I honestly don't give a shit about, when you have this big whole like boo hoo hoo, so and so cheated on me and whatnot. Like in Hollywood, guess what? Everybody's fucking everybody in Hollywood. It's just those who get caught, right? Like this is one of the age-old things that goes back to the beginning of Hollywood. Everybody's fucking everybody. Like I say that all the time, and I'm half joking, but I'm half honest when I say most movies, you can tell that most of which the leading ladies and the men have slept together, right? Like, and that's most of the movies. So... yeah, it's just one of those things. But thank you for that, Callum Lyle, just the same, but I have no real comment other than that. Full Metal Smile says, see the documentary about how Life of Pi destroyed rhythm and hues for all those reasons. I think I know what you're talking about, and I'm trying to remember the name of it. But I do remember this, yes. But yeah, we've reached this point where they're expecting too much out of these companies, and a lot of the times that's partially the company's fault or whoever they have in charge of saying yes to the studios and taking those bids. So yeah. Matthew Valente says Pixar and Marvel are both overrated and far too child friendly. I think he means overrated. Well, Pixar is Pixar is meant to be family films, so that I don't have a problem with. Marvel, I think that there should be two levels, just like DC. I don't have a problem with having an adult, darker version of stuff and more kid-friendly. I believe you should be able.
Darker on
I am to a point, but certain characters, they just lend themselves to that. It is to a point, but certain characters do lend themselves to that. But my point is this: as long as I've got, because this was my biggest problem when Man of Steel came out, was that if you can't take a kid to a Superman movie, then that's a problem. Unless they tell you that this is not going to be a Superman movie for kids, which they didn't really say that about Man of Steel. Sure, it was rated PG-13, but so was every fucking superhero movie since Batman. So, I mean, to me, that's not a good bar to go by. But we have reached the end of the train here. Taryn the Black says, Method Man had some comments about the MCU on Hip Hop podcast called My Expert Opinion. Basically echoing what we're saying, things are changing. Good. Interesting. And he's somebody who's he's kind of in the in-ish in the industry. Oh, and we did miss one. Warachi, sorry about this. Sent one in before, but we'll grab that in just a second after we address this one. That's interesting to hear. You were going to say something there, Culture. Is that your roommate?
No. God, would you guys keep trying? Everybody's trying to guess.
We're getting closer, though, by that no.
Yeah, you guys.
It's one of the Wu-Tang Clan kids.
I didn't say anything like that.
Boom. And then we got one from Warachi earlier who said, what do you all think of folks like Ken Akamutsu? If I'm saying that right, say it right, Tommy says. I'm not shitting you. A Love Hina author who ran for office in Japan and won. His main platform was to fight against foreign censorship. Does it bode well? Well, it does for them over there. It might bode well for us here, but I don't know how big is. I don't know if China, Japan is as big of a market, like say as China or something like that. Is it really for the U.S.?
They do pretty decent numbers.
Do they?
Japan and Korea, South Korea, and some other Asian countries like that do pretty decent numbers. I mean, they're not like huge numbers, and usually they're combined in the primary 64 markets. But I mean, it's hard to say. But you have think about the content moderation that they're trying to do in France, right? That they're trying to get Disney to fall under some guidance there. As opposed to what they've been putting out recently. We'll have to see what all that turns out to be.
I was going to say, I think it's going to be a bigger deal when, like, these recent box office for movies like Lightyear and Doctor Strange and Thor Love and Thunder are a bigger signal than I believe maybe something like that. But I'm sure it'll make a difference. Matthew, go ahead.
No, just real quick. France is also, one of the countries right now that's thumbing their nose at Disney, trying to force theatrical window releases for stuff. And hold them in those places longer. So
yeah. And then Matthew Valente says kids movies like Pixar ones and Disney can be dark too. Yes, they can. And Pixar's actually
fairy tales are dark, but in a very different way. They're not derivative dark, which means poorly lit and cursing and blood and gore for gratuity's sake, which is what I find to be boring and derivative.
Well, and I will say this, Matthew, as soon as Lasseter was out the door, Pixar movies used to be made for both levels. Not so much anymore. I
they were made with the parents in mind. Be like, okay,
exactly.
Family's going to have to take their bratty kid to see this. Let's at least make sure it's enjoyable for them as well.
And sit through it 500 times. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, because when they get it on video, they're going to want to watch it again. But no, you're right. It used to be multi-quadrant films. That's what you're focused on. And
and Disney from time to time has dipped its toe into the dark arena. Oh yeah, but
something wicked this may come.
Well, not just that, like the the Black Cauldron and stuff like that. But that didn't work out the best for them. But still, but that's the problem. That's a poor case in point, especially if you're trying to make a case for it, because that didn't work out too well for them. And even you can look at the demise of DreamWorks Animation. And also, that was kind of their whole thing, is they were trying to market family films that were a little bit more darker and a little bit more adult. And they didn't have a ton of hits come out of that. Shrek is one of the few that came out of that. And I think Prince of Egypt was the only other big one they had. I mean, even like my favorite of those DreamWorks animated films, Road to El Dorado, was a fucking flop. So, I mean, they even tried, like Fox even tried a few, like with Titan AE and stuff like that. And there's a bit of a market for it, but I think that's probably more on streaming and cable than it is in theatrical releases. You get anomalies once in a while, like a Heavy Metal that'll make some money, but that's just a rarity when it comes to animated films. Maybe like this Lord of the Rings animated film coming from Warner Brothers being a bit more adult oriented. You're muted, Culture.
The War of Rohirrim.
Rohirrim, or however you say it.
Rohirrim.
So yeah. But with that, unless we missed any more, let me double check here. She says, I got everything. And thank you, Culture, for helping me produce this morning. I appreciate your help.
Absolutely.
Thank you, 70s, for coming in. Thank you, Scott, for hopping in. Thank you, Script, for being here.
And
appreciate
the great Chris Gore.
And of course, yes, the great Kiss. God damn it.
You have my problem right now. I need blood sugar, Tom.
I do. Yes, I do. I need to eat something. I have not ate. Yes. Thank you to Chris once again for being here on almost every Monday. You make it an awesome way to kick off the week here at Midnight Edge in the morning. And so do you guys out there in the chat. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have a show. We'd be talking to ourselves. And yes, great Kiss Gore. Great Kiss Gore, the God Killer. Yes, indeed. So with that, we're going to wrap things up this morning. We just barely went over time, so that's not too shabby. All right. Thank you again, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other. And as always, it is time for Koalas in the Rain.
Koalas in the rain. Koalas in the rain. No fucks given. Koala, koala. Koalas in the rain. Koalas in the rain. No fucks given. Koala, koala. Koalas in the rain.